Good afternoon. This is Newton Cook, and welcome to the South Florida Water Management District Recreation Forum. Before we start tonight's meeting, I would like to ask for just a moment of silence for the terrible tragedy of the loss of the FWC officer, Julian King, in the last couple of days in LaBelle. So please, with all of who are listening, just observe a moment of silence before we start the meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much. Officer Julian King was a wonderful young man who I had met several times in the field. And it's such a sad tragedy, and we offer the condolences to his family. Now, we're fortunate to have with us the Executive Director of the South Florida Water Management District, Mr. Drew Bartlett, and he would like to say a few words to the group. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you, Newton. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for recognizing Officer King. That was a tragedy that I'm glad we got to think about this evening. Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is Drew Bartlett. I'm the Executive Director. I've had the pleasure of attending all the rec forums. I think I missed one, but certainly it's been a great experience for me, and I really enjoyed the discussion. And I am sorry about calling Newton and having to cancel the last meeting, which was scheduled for March 16th. That was right when we were all learning that COVID was on our doorstep and inside the house. And, you know, we were certainly figuring out how to shift to these COVID operations with social distancing and all that. And we didn't have time to shift to the virtual environment for that meeting. So I'm glad we're able to do it for this meeting. Certainly COVID has been a challenge for us, and it's certainly been a challenge with respect to trying to keep recreational opportunities open. We've been working closely with FWC and the parks during COVID to be consistent, listen to our local health officials, and manage the lands and recreational opportunities following those recommendations. It is nice as we sit here with this recreational forum that we have been able to open our recreation areas back up to the public, because we have some of the best recreation areas in the state, if not in the planet, right here with the South Florida Water Management District. And so that opening is very encouraging. We even have some primitive campgrounds open. But we're looking to see what's the next step with our more populated campgrounds and having to keep facilities clean and maintained while still dealing with a pandemic. I certainly am proud of the staff's perseverance during this pandemic, and I'm glad they were able to come together tonight and, you know, provide presentations and facilitate discussion on our recreational programs and activities. And we have been really keeping things going as a district, whether it's projects, whether it's land maintenance, whether it's operations. It's just continuing to tick, even though our buildings are closed and we're having to implement social distancing. The one thing I've been working at recently is understanding best how we do exotics control at the Water Management District. And I couldn't be more proud of our program. I have seen the success that we do. I've seen the innovation that we do, and I've seen, you know, what good land management looks like. There's always room for improvement, and our staff never shy away from innovation and getting better at what we're doing. But we presented at the RAC, the Water Resources Forum, earlier today about some of the things we're doing, and then we had a land management workshop with the board. So we've really been engaging the public a lot on land management. I couldn't be more proud of them. So I really thank everyone for attending. We've got some great presentations up in front of us tonight. And without further ado, Newton, I'd like to turn it back over to you because I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight.
Thank you very much, Drew. Appreciate it very much. And we sure appreciate the support that the district has given to those of us who recreate on the properties. Just some housekeeping. Obviously, this is new for all of us. So we appreciate you bearing with us as we go through this process. We're glad to have all of you here. We might actually have more people than when we have it just in the auditorium, because we do have it where everyone can attend, wherever you are across the whole district, from Orlando to the Florida Bay. So we hope that you will enjoy the meeting tonight. There will be several opportunities for public comment. When you do want to do public comment, if you're on Zoom, you use the raise hand feature, and you will be recognized, and your name will be announced for you to begin your public comment. If you're on the phone, you hit *9, and that will raise your hand. And then when you're prompted by the operator, you hit *6, and that will unmute you so that you can make your comment. So appreciate you working with us as we go through that. Obviously, we're using Zoom because of this coronavirus that we're going through, and the top priority of the district is to keep all of us as healthy as we can through this process. So we expect to be done before 8 o'clock. We always are. I have a soft gravel, and I'll be sure that we get there. We'll be doing public comments after each presentation. That's a bit of a change because we normally do one in the beginning and one at the end as well as each presentation, but it's very unwieldy to go around the table as we normally do. So with that being said, Charles Rayside, I guess you are ready. Charles is the president of the Palm City Farms Trail Association, and Charles is going to give us an overview of the Palm Cities Farm Trail Association, and we look forward to hearing from Charles. So, Mr. Rayside, will you please begin?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I'd just like to tell everybody a little bit about what we do and what our organization focuses on. And we're a nonprofit community service organization, obviously in Palm City, Florida, just west of Stewart. We have a kind of a unique community that has a trail grid for outdoor activities like horseback riding, bicycling, hiking. And we kind of focus on maintaining those trails. Most of them are very wooded and closed off areas. And so we try to take care of those trails. We were established in June of '03. I'm a new president this year. Been involved in the association about 6-7 years. Ron, our past president now, is there from the beginning and is still kind of our historian of all of the different trails. We have a membership of about 75 people that are directly live in the Palm City Farms plat. But we kind of serve everybody in the community because the trails are public and available just simply through anybody that wants to drive in or come in there. We have a kind of a very modest membership fee, an annual fee, as you see there on the screen, $25, $50 for a family, and $100 for, let's say, a barn sponsorship or a club membership like a bike club or something. But of that, we're using that money. So we're an all volunteer organization, and we're using that to maintain really hundreds of miles of trails, along with other volunteer areas where we go that are not the trails that we maintain. Essentially, our mission is we're going to keep the trails clear, maintained, vitalized, and safe. We try to establish new trails. We organize and gain access to other county, lands for horseback riding, biking, and hiking. Should there be, an example might be, access to the FDOT property, that kind of thing, just to try to find as many recreation places as we can for people to go. The officers, we have four officers involved, plus another 4 directors. And then our past president, Ron, I mentioned earlier. I won't go through the list of all of them, but we've all been involved in it pretty heavily for years. Like I said, Ron, going back to the very beginning. As far as community service, that is what we're all about. We think open, clear, and safe trails. As you know, you can see where the picture on the left where the dogs walk, and it won't take long in Florida, and that would be unpassable. And so we do a lot of trail projects of hand clearing and keeping those paths pulled back. We also work with the neighboring communities and our county administrators. For instance, the Canopy Creek Trail map on the right, we worked with the community to get that map built, because in that we're trying to make sure that the hikers, bikers, and or equestrians are staying on the trails that are established for them and not wandering off into private properties and creating things that might otherwise hinder our progress. Safety is a big thing, especially, bikers and equestrians, and hikers as well, but cleared trails are critter free, and equestrian vines and debris can be a problem for them. So we'll spin in this picture on the left. This was the Pony Club of Palm City up there helping us clear some trails of the debris when FDOT, or what's now Map Creek Preserve, was first established. That boat and tons of other stuff was in the main road coming in. We helped on a cleanup. We do a lot. We'll do reporting. The person on the horse at the top, you're seeing some trails that are just somebody dumped debris in there, that once that grows up a little bit, it'll give a hiker or a horse a fit. So we're trying to report that stuff, and then we'll organize a cleanup to come back to and finish what we're doing there. We get into a few little things. People inadvertently and or on purpose may misplace fences or put up misleading signs because they feel like they're trying to keep out people on land they believe might be theirs, or they may pass, like the sign on the bottom there, they may cross a trail inadvertently thinking that it's their land or not established property. So we'll work with them about getting that reopened, or with the county in places where we do that. We do run into upper right-hand corner some intentional and unsafe blockages where somebody's dug a big pit there in the middle of the trail with some attempt to stop use, but it's public land. They really shouldn't have even dug it, but they do. The lower right, there's a barrier there, and you don't see it, and that's the danger of it. They put up one strand of barbed wire across that public right-of-way. Thought they were helping keep out people, but so we try to spot those and keep them clear, keep it safe, and also allow people to safely travel throughout the farm's trails without having to get out into the highways and stuff as much as possible. And then activities, we're going to spin on the trail systems. We're managing these hundreds of miles of trails out there through the farms. On a typical week, we're doing clearing and maintenance. We get volunteer crews together. Sometimes we use a little dues to hire extra people if we can't come up with enough volunteers for the week or for the particular event. We do a little bit of public awareness. We have a Facebook web page and try to keep people aware that we're working for them, and get as much political support as we can to keep these recreation areas available to the Western community, but really anybody that you can drive out there and enjoy Canopy Creek on a horse if you come from anywhere. Trail mapping and marking, we do a lot of maps available on our website, or you can get them from there. We'll do marking on, we have our own little signs, the little yellow sign in the upper corner. We'll try to mark the trails again to help you work your way through it. We've been involved in marking really anywhere. We enjoy being out there. We did a couple of years ago, we did a Dupree remarking when that was needed. And then we kind of survey for lost or blocked trails. These are all county right-of-ways, county-owned land that's in the farms or the Palm City Farms plat. And so sometimes we work towards getting blockages cleared up. From a social, we kind of will organize, joint rides. They work together. You can get on a thread and get invited so you don't have to ride alone or hike alone. We'll also work towards new member intros with rides. So members joining, or really anybody that will inquire to the Trail Association. A lot of times some of the people, the riders, will meet up with you and ride with you the first time just to take you through, start you through some sections and start explaining the trails so you can really help figure out your way around out there. We do these drive-away rides. Sometimes that's intimidating for the first time. If you think you're going to drive away, you're going to drive to, out to Dupuy, or you're going to go to a park somewhere that you're not familiar with. And so they'll go as a group and take them out to Allapattah, show them where to park, show them where to ride. We organize camping trips. We've been to a number of South Florida water districts, camping areas that have equestrian facilities, and we'll kind of take people out and make group camping trips to keep it fun and to introduce new people to the facilities. From a government standpoint, we spend a little time there kind of advocating for new trails and lands that are available, and anything we can do to help, get these places available for outdoor enthusiasts. We work to clear or open, closed off right of ways. That's going to be blocked by debris, trees, clearing, but we'll do anything we can to help, make it a way to get around so you can make a loop out of your ride. We also spend a little bit of time looking for newly closed trails. Even today, there's still, you got dumping going on, you got blockage issues, and so they'll survey them occasionally by horseback or bike or hikers and report them back. And it's kind of our job to work on getting those cleared back up. We recently had one they cleared some sable palms and all that, and they thought it was a good place to dump all their debris, and it just happened to be in the trail. And so it was just letting them know that was a trail, and they got cleared up pretty quickly. Occasionally it gets a little harder. You got to go to the county and get them to help you with it, because technically it is county land. The trails are county property, they're right of ways. And so we work with them closely. Commissioner Campy's been, great with us as far as working through these issues and getting us to the right people to keep these things open for the public. Bringing up our youth lately is tough. We like to see these trails, these campgrounds. What South Florida Water Management District supplies is amazing. To get kids out, to give them something to do at these campgrounds, a lot of times it's a chance for kids and their parents to hang together without hanging out on a street corner. Makes kids feel good. They're out in the wild. They're on horses, or they're on they're on bikes or backpacking or hiking, and I think it's good for them. It's something we need more of, and that's a big focus of what we do. And camping trips, as I said, they're a highlight of it. These are just a few of the places that we've been. Pictures of the kind of areas they are. The campgrounds are great. The traveling is good, and there's just not much better. A lot of it's rough camping, and everybody really enjoys that part of it. It's just a way to get out there and get back to nature, and a lot of fun for everybody. So we try to organize those as much as possible. And that's really the extent of what we do, is try to get some public awareness of these places for people to go, keep the trails safe and open, acquire more new green space or update it, and then social events to give people a reason to actually get out there and visit these places. And you can see that the lower right-hand corner is a picture of a geo crossing that we worked with the county to build, and opposed to a culvert to get across that ditch. They built us a geo crossing, and it's worked out real well. The upper picture there was a typical scene you might see at Dupuy camping in the horse camping area. So it's worked out real well. So that pretty much sums us up.
Okay, Charles, thank you very much. Now's the time. If anyone has a comment or a question, raise your hand or hit *9 and you will be recognized.
Mr. Cook, we have one, David Denham. Mr. Denham, please unmute. Oh, he lowered his hand. No other public speakers.
Okay, thank you. This
You're
is
welcome.
one of the reasons why, I'm sorry, go ahead. This is one of the reasons why we try to have one of our stakeholders come in and make a presentation at each of our meetings. A lot of people do not know about all these opportunities that are out there. And this definitely is a great organization and obviously does a lot of good work. So Charles, thank you very much for your report. And we will now move on to an overview of the district's DBHYDRO web, and Sharon Peterkin, the staff environmental scientist, will make that presentation. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Yes, I'll be providing a brief overview of the DBHYDRO web browser. The DBHYDRO is the Water Management District web application to download environmental data. DBHYDRO is where we store all of our environmental data. And in order to access, all you have to really do is go to our website, and you can go to www.sfwmd.gov/DBHYDRO. That's one of the ways to access the DBHYDRO environmental corporate database. Later in the presentation, we'll get more ways to access the data. Just a few things to illustrate the environmental monitoring map. There's a URL that you can physically type in, or once you get logged on to DBHYDRO, you'll see that on the DBHYDRO's main page, you can just click on the web map link, and that would take you directly to the environmental monitoring map. It's important to let the public know that DBHYDRO support is available. We have DBHYDRO technical support by dialing our West Palm Beach office, which is our corporate headquarters, and that number is 561-686-8800, extension 4594, or you can dial on our 1-800 number, the same extension, 4594. Another opportunity that helps the public with DBHYDRO information is our DBHYDRO user guide and FAQ, frequently asked question. Now, the DBHYDRO users guide, when you click on that link, also available on the DBHYDRO main webpage, that will take you into step-by-step instructions. So if you need that type of illustration, you can click on the DBHYDRO User's Guide and it will give you step-by-step instructions. Now our FAQ, which is frequently asked questions, some of the commonly asked questions have already been answered for you. So I do highly recommend that you just peruse the DBHYDRO User's Guide FAQ for some of your answers are already, some of your questions have already been answered. Next page. Well, what types are available? What data types are available within DBHYDRO? The first one here is hydrologic and physical data, which represents our water level data, our rainfall meteorological data, which consists of, if you'd like to know the wind direction, wind speed, or any air weather station data is available to you. Now, again, under the hydrologic data, that consists of water level, our flow data, our gate opening information, and pump speed information. So throughout the district, we have these pump stations that are moving water, and you can also see the type, it'll give you the pump speed information. Now, we also have a very comprehensive water quality data program at the district. So we measure things like phosphorus and mercury and a lot of the physical parameters, something that could be measured physically, such as dissolved oxygen, salinity, conductivity, and pH. In addition to that, we have our hydrogeologic data, which consists of our groundwater, lithologic data, and geophysical data. And the groundwater data will give you things like the groundwater formation. Now, go back to that last slide, thank you. Most of the commonly asked questions that I receive, the public really wants to know, what is the gate opening right now? I want to go fishing. So that would be real-time data. And now the district stores this real-time data exactly on the district's webpage. Next slide. Our real-time data. Real-time data from the South Florida Water Management District's website. We have it posted there. So if you were to click on that hyperlink that says www.sfwmd.gov/site status, you can go ahead and click there, Yvette. Okay, so here is the Water Management District regional breakdown. Of course, we all want to know about Lake Okeechobee. But today I'm going to focus more on the East Coast. So Yvette, if you would scroll over to where it says East Coast. No, go back up. Okay. So right now you can see like this orange color that's focused on Lake O. Over to the right, right before the end of that thread there, you should see East Coast. If you would click directly on East Coast.
Sorry, Sharon, I have a few pages open, so I'll need to,
Okay, you're good where you're now.
okay.
So right now you're on Lake O, followed by Upper Kissimmee. It's to the right of the Lake O.
Okay, you looking for the flows or?
No, right now, see that orange color that's highlighted? That's
Right here.
that Lake O? At the top, that menu?
No, I don't. I don't have that.
Okay.
I don't have it highlighted, or at least on my screen.
Okay. So if we were to go to, well, we'll do Lake Okeechobee. Let's see what I can find here.
Okay, so is this where you want?
Okay, if
Up
it's
on the
not
top. Okay.
if it's not highlighted for you,
Mhm.
just scroll over, even if it's not highlighted.
Okay, Sharon, but on the Lake Okeechobee, up in the upper top or the
Okay.
highlighted area?
Well, the
That's all I see.
the first thing that may be there before you see Lake Okeechobee.
Sharon?
It says it's in safe mode, safe driving mode.
Sharon,
And I don't want to say done speaking.
Sharon, we can hear you. You're unmuted. Are you having technical issues?
Okay, I'm back. Okay, so right now, even if it's not highlighted, you still should see Lake Okeechobee.
We
At
do
the
see
top.
Lake Okeechobee up on the top, correct?
And then scroll over to the right, you should see Upper Kissimmee.
Yes, on the
Good, you're
ribbon.
doing
Mhm.
okay, followed by Lake Kissimmee. Lower Kissimmee. EAA, STA, RBHL, WMA. And you're going to keep going and click on the East Coast.
Okay.
That's where you to be. Okay, great. This is the East Coast. So the East Coast represents our canal levels in the East Coast region. Now today, illustration, we're going to scroll down to
I'm sorry, folks. We are experiencing some technical issues with Sharon. Sharon, you went offline again. Sharon? Sharon? Mr. Cook?
okay.
Yes,
Can
I
you
understand.
Okay.
Can
You're
Sharon,
back.
let me see. Sharon, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, we might not be able to show that, but just explain and move on and just explain what you're trying to tell us about that particular location, okay?
Okay, all right. So for the East Coast Canal, I just need you to scroll down to Palm Beach County.
If the scrolling is not working, just explain what you are going to show us, even though we cannot see it. We will understand that the canal levels and the movement of the water is something important to the snook fishers.
Sharon, I am on the Palm Beach canals. That's what's showing on my screen? I'm not sure what's showing on yours. Okay. Mr. Cook, would you share, you're having technical issues? Would you like to go on to the next one? We'll come back, or Mr. Cook?
Yeah, I'm listening. Is Sharon gone or is she still on?
She's experiencing technical issues. It could be possibility to the T-Mobile network
Okay,
issues.
it's unmuted now, so I can continue.
Okay, that's Sharon. If we cannot
Yes.
show you and move the scroll, just explain what you are telling us, because so
Okay.
people can understand when you talk about canals and about the depth and the speed and the movement of the
Okay.
water and where the snook move. They got that. These people pretty well know that. Okay.
Okay, Palm Beach Canals. If you go to Palm Beach Canals, and then if you were to select, I think the third link, if you scroll over, the third one down, the C18 canal, I believe that's S46. If you scroll over to the right. Great, great. S46. So this is the S46 real-time data. And you can see that we're measuring at S46, the flow data. There are 3 gates at gate openings: the headwater, rainfall, and tailwater. Okay, so that's the real-time data for S46. Now we can go back to the slides, Yvette. Thank you. Okay, now if you move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so again, gate opening data is available for, we just saw S46. So open gates and a visual flow, which you can see the guys on the pier, equals a good fishing day. Next slide. Okay, where is the snook? And this is the picture of the S46, the fishing platforms that were constructed. Next slide. Okay, this is just an illustration. It's not S46, but this is an illustration where here's a gated spillway and you have 3 gates that are open. Okay, so if they were closed, you wouldn't see any physical activity there, but you can see that all 3 gates are fully open. Next slide. And we just illustrated for you S46 monitoring and how to access the SFWMD real-time data, where we saw the 3 gate openings, the water levels, which is the head and tail water, and the flow data. And the structure type is gate openings, spillway gate openings. Now, what a lot of folks are not aware of, that we actually take water quality samples at S46. And one of the reasons are that you would have to type in DBHYDRO C18, because that spillway structure is located on the C18 canal, and then the structure identification is S46. Next slide. Okay, so here we're going to talk about the environmental monitoring web map. Next slide. And this is an image that I created for the S46. It's just an image that I created using that web map. Next slide. Okay, and now how did I create that image using the web map? Well, you see those colorful little icons at the bottom of the of the slide there, those are called widgets. And if you're using the web map, you can create your own map by using the colorful widgets there. And these are all, this is all information that's contained in the DBHYDRO user's guide. And again, we have our telephone support line. If you need to call us, we have DBHYDRO technical support to walk you through creating those maps. Next slide. And again, another feature of using the web map is that you're able to change the background of the map, the base map. So same picture, just different background. And again, this is the S46 Southwest Fort Loxahatchee River at Indian Time Road. So same map zoomed in at S46. Next slide. Okay, I mentioned earlier about we take water quality samples at S46. So this photo illustrates one of our technicians taking a sample, a water quality sample on the platform there. So what he does, he collects that water sample and brings it back to our West Palm Beach Environmental Laboratory, and they analyze that sample right there at the district's environmental laboratory. Next slide. Okay, I just want to acknowledge my supervisor, Jonathan Madden, for this opportunity to share with you this information for this presentation, and our Bureau Chief, Mr. Stuart Van Horn, and Mr. Glenn, our Division Director, and Brian Turcott, which is our Enterprise Scientific Data Manager. Next slide. Okay, I want to thank you at this time, and you can contact me personally, also known as the Data Diva at the Water Management District. So you can call and everyone knows who the Data Diva is, and I can help you with this. Go back to the previous slide, Yvette. Okay. Now, if you scroll over, you have my contact information to the right of that. If you scroll over to the right, or it shows my email address on this slide. You scroll over and you'll see my email address and my telephone number listed there. Okay.
Okay.
All right. You can see that. Okay. I'm done.
All right. Sharon, thank you very much for a great presentation. It's a very technical thing, but a lot of people out there who fish the canals and the structures, actually this device, I call it a device, you can go in there and get a lot of information that will really help you, because obviously if we got flow, we got current, you got snook, and you can do this on a real-time basis. Now, you probably give away a little secret about a pretty good fishing spot there at the S46. And a brief story on that. Several years ago, that was all shut off. The district put a gate up, put a fence up, closed it all off for remodeling or refixing of that structure. And during that time, during the recreation meeting, one just like tonight, it was brought up by several stakeholders that they had been fishing there for many years, and all of a sudden they could not get there to fish. And the district immediately, Gary Crinch, thank you very much, went to work and did a design that would allow the public again to access that spot. And if you go there today, you'll see the work that was done. A lot of money was spent in order for the public to access and fix that X46 structure. And so thank you very much, South Florida Water Management District. So if anyone has any questions or comments to Sharon, now is the time. Again, you can wave your hand, and if you're on the phone, just hit *9.
Mr. Cook, we have two public speakers. First is Mr. Richard Martinez, followed by Nyla Pipes. Mr. Martinez, please unmute.
So I had a quick question for Sharon. How far back does the data go on the website?
Okay, am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Sharon.
Okay. At the time of the installation, it goes that far back. So the day they the information and put it online, we are recording that data. And the first day they saw it goes back at that. So if we saw the equipment May 1st of 2022, just an example. Yeah, some of the that data goes back to maybe, wow, the early 70s, early 80s. But we have some data in the database that goes back in a cooperation with the USGS in the 1950s. So that date will vary based on installation of our equipment at the site.
And is that on the website?
Yes, that's directly available on DBHYDRO. So DBHYDRO has all this information contained in browser, on the browser. You log on to DBHYDRO, you have a start date. Our start date represents the very exact day we began recording. And the end date will be up until the day that we have processed the data, quality assurance data is stated and verified and posted. Now our end date, because we're doing a wonderful job with our monitoring at the Water Management District, you can see, you can go in and access the provisional data. So they're getting very close to having this data posted. When you access the provisional data, you can access data that's collected today, but it will let you know that it's provisional data and it's subject to change. So the quality assured quality control, which we refer to as QA/QC, that process takes an additional 2 weeks for the data to be saying that it's approved. But again, you have access to the data, provisional data. But if you want the QA/QC data, that will be another 2 weeks from that date of the provisional date.
Thank you very much. Next.
Oh, Nyla Pipes.
Evening, everyone. I just wanted to add that on the DBHYDRO website, you have these wonderful online classes basically to take, so that if people want to get really into this and be familiar with DBHYDRO, that's a really great way to go about it. And I know, that you also have done classes in the past in person. So I expect as we, tackle COVID and all of that, we will be getting back to some of those things. So it's a great resource for people working on water issues. You know, a lot of the time people will call me and they'll say, I'm at such and such canal and it looks terrible. And what's going on? And is the lock open on this canal? And it's great to be able to go right away and access this information and tell people what it is we're seeing, and right down to, you know, the rainfall data that's there, and whether the locks are open or not, et cetera. So again, I just thought we should probably mention that there is an online option for people if they want to really become educated on DBHYDRO. Thank you so much for everything.
Okay, I was hoping that someone would mention that, honestly. I was hoping that someone would bring that up. And of course, I'm being led from our management team. And I'll give you a brief overview. The district offers free one-day training for anyone. The public can come in and take our DBHYDRO training. We offer that information. And right now, the district is closed to public. But like you said, on our DBHYDRO page, the user can sign up for the DBHYDRO training class. And once we have enough people that's available to have a class, we provide you with a free, there's no charge. Anyone from the public can come in and take the class. We usually begin the class at 9 and finish at 3. There's no cost for you to attend. And it's held, these classes are held at 3301 Gun Club Road, West Palm Beach, which is our South Florida Water Management District headquarters. So thank you for mentioning that. We do have some online, just snippets online, snippets of DBHYDRO training where a user can also go in and peruse the DBHYDRO training information. But again, those are very brief, and that's provide just someone that's have a little bit knowledge of DBHYDRO. You can go in and refresh what you already know, but I highly recommend our DBHYDRO training class. For the public can come in and take the class in person. And the reason why I highly recommend that is because we have it in our operations center training room, the EOC training room, where everyone is set up with their own computer. You don't have to bring your own computer. We provide a computer to you in a classroom environment where it's hands-on training. You're not sitting for 6 hours and listening to me talk. In the classroom environment, you have your computer and we work and we provide you with hands-on instructions. And the feedback that I've been given from the participants, oh, this is so much better to have hands-on training where we go through step-by-step instructions. And the feedback that I've received in the past has been excellent on that district training course.
Sharon, I do have Section Leader Jonathan Madden who would like to speak.
Hi, John.
John, if you...
Hey, can you hear me, Yvette?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon, for presenting and sharing this information with everyone. I just wanted to, there are so many ways to access the data. I do support you getting some training. Of course, the district is always evolving to try to improve our interface where the data can be accessed, but Sharon is always willing to pull data for you. In response to Mr. Martinez, I looked at the same site that Yvette was navigating. What we looked at was the instantaneous, like the latest reading when she clicked on S46, but over to the left, there was a little symbol, kind of looked like a couple data points, and that will give you the last 7 days of stages and flow kind of information there, right from that. site, which is fairly easy to remember. Site status, sfwmd.gov/site status will give you the last 7 days. And as Sharon had mentioned, you can look much further back in history using a different interface, but we're going to be working to keep these things as user-friendly as possible and improve them, and maybe even the training, whether we're going to be doing that remotely or in the office. It's very helpful. So that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I have next Gary Ritter.
Yes, hey, to echo some of the comments of Sharon and Nyla, and although I'm an ex-district employee, I would like to say I've taken the DBHYDRO class several years ago, and I wanted to reinforce what Sharon has said, and it's very valuable for anybody that wants to take it. You get to learn a lot of different things on that and how to navigate through DBHYDRO. And that environment is ever changing. It's very dynamic, as you just heard. So it's not bad for you to go back in and do some refresher with that. And also I wanted to say that staff is very receptive of comments. And I think a lot of times with these stakeholder meetings, you get someone that has a suggestion for improvement, and they are readily they will do whatever it takes to make any improvements if it makes sense in that system. But I highly recommend the course, even though I am an ex-district employee. It's always good for a refresher. And Sharon, thanks for a great presentation.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Gary. Next is Danny James. Mr. James, please unmute. Mr. James, please.
Hello, in there?
We can hear you. Thank you.
We're local duck hunters, and I've been out here in Broward County forever. I've moved to Palm Beach, and we have 2 boat ramps on the east side of 27, and we're curious why they've closed them down to not let the boaters out there use those.
Mr. James, a good question, but I think you would probably do better waiting for Jerry Krintz's presentation, because he's definitely addressing that subject. That subject will be addressed. It's a very important subject, and it will come along shortly. So thank you very much for your question.
All right, thank you. I'll stand by.
Mr. Cook, I have no other public speakers.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Sharon. I know that's a bit technical, but if you're a snook fisherman and you want to know where the gates are open and the flows are, you will learn how to use this DBHYDRO website. Next on the agenda is a more interesting, one of the most interesting subjects that we have been discussed in, and only in South Florida can you have a 2020 Python Bowl recap. Nowhere else in the world do they have Python Bowl recaps. And of course, Mike Kirkland here, the invasive animal biologist, he is an expert and has been involved in that from day one. So Mike, look forward to your presentation.
Hey, thank you very much. So my name is Mike Kirkland, and like Newton said, I'm an invasive animal biologist with the South Florida Water Management District, and I also manage our Python elimination program. Today, I'm going to briefly highlight our state's contractor programs along with 2020's Python Challenge. But first, a quick overview. Burmese pythons are from Southeast Asia and were brought to Florida through the exotic pet trade business. Because of South Florida's subtropical environment, which mimics this species' native range, pythons are able to thrive and reproduce in the Everglades. And indeed, we're witnessing an emergency for native wildlife in the Everglades with reports of significant declines in some regions. This graphic on the left represents the hypothetical diet that a Burmese python would consume to reach 13 feet long in approximately 5 to 7 years. So in 2017, our governing board decided to take aggressive action to remove Burmese pythons from Florida's natural areas. In March of 2017, the district's python elimination program was started. And our partner agency, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, or FWC, began their sister program the following month. Sorry, it's a little sensitive. There we go. So the contractor programs offer access to designated public lands to spirited individuals with an acumen for catching large constrictors. Our contractors are paid by the hour to survey the project area and an additional incentive for every invasive snake removed based on length. The district and FWC currently have 50 contractors in each of their respective programs. So this is our list of target species, which is made up of large constrictors found on the state's conditional species list and the federal injurious species list. Over 99% of the snakes removed through the contractor programs, however, are Burmese pythons. Oh, sorry, there we go. So here's our current project map, which encompasses 6 counties and occurs on both state and federal lands. Contractors are paid minimum wage to survey the areas in blue and $15 per hour to survey the areas shaded in pink. These premium pay areas have much smaller python populations than the blue areas, so we try to encourage our contractors to survey these fringe areas to try and push back against further populations. So we've introduced technology and innovation to these programs. Our geospatial department has customized smartphone applications to collect valuable field data electronically, which also serve as automated invoicing systems. We've cut out as much of the paperwork as possible and introduced efficiencies for both contractors and staff alike. This software also allows us to track contractors in real time when they're in the field. This increases accountability, safety, and helps me optimize coverage of the project area. The software provides instant analytics. Contractors have their own electronic dashboards to track their progress, and here's a screenshot of my manager's dashboard where I can track the progress and statistics of all 50 of our hunters. Though like with any environmental issue, an integrated approach is called for by having multiple strategies working in concert with each other. That said, the contractor programs have become the most successful management tool against invasive pythons to date in terms of both number of snakes removed over time and cost effectiveness. And in this graph here, you can see the large increase of python removal since the contractor programs were launched in 2017. I created this presentation a week ago and can now say that we've collectively removed over 4,450 pythons now. And our leadership in Tallahassee has taken notice of these programs and boosted its support to our momentum. On August 7th, 2019, Governor Ron DeSantis announced expansions to removal efforts and increased collaboration among partnering agencies, particularly between the district, FWC, and the National Park Service. The governor's initiative included coordinating management goals, maximizing removal efforts, engaging veterans groups, and aligning removal programs. The FWC and the district expanded their programs to have 50 contractors each versus 25, and the National Park Service increased their number of authorized agents to 250. And the governor also announced a return to Python challenges, which are scheduled events where the public is given access to public lands and encouraged to remove as many pythons as possible. We'll be doing these annually now, and the first one occurred this year in January. Because it coincided with the last Super Bowl, which was held in Miami, we called this year's challenge the Python Bowl. So the areas in orange are where this 10-day competition was held, which encompassed 7 separate wildlife and small game management areas. This was a large undertaking, and the district and FWC staff manned 7 separate check-in stations each day during the competition. The contractor programs are highly selective in who is qualified enough to participate, but in the Python challenges, anyone from the public is welcome to register and participate. They bring awareness to invasive species issues, promote public engagement, and help remove more pythons from the wild. On January 25th, we held the Python Bowl Awards ceremony. Top performers from each category stood to win prizes ranging from ATVs to cash rewards. This year, we had 750 registrants from 20 different states participate, resulting in 80 pythons being removed. The contractor programs and Python challenges are just 2 tools in a large toolbox to help manage this issue. As I said before, the best path forward is an integrated approach where multiple strategies are working in concert with one another. And these bullets are just some of the different management efforts that are going on today. Those separate agencies, the FWC, the district, and the National Park Service consider us all to be the same team with the same mission, which is to combat invasive species and restore our natural areas to provide suitable habitat for native wildlife. So how can you get involved? We haven't yet announced the dates for the 2021 challenge, but there's no permit required to humanely remove invasive pythons from public areas. And of course, there's an app for that. You can call 188 I've got one, or you can download this app to report python sightings and captures. And you can follow the progress of the district's contractor program by visiting our website. Just search for Python Elimination Program and you'll find it. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions and comments.
Mr. Cook, we have one public speaker, Daniel Watson, followed by Mike Melton.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
First, I just want to thank you guys for putting on these recreation meetings. It's great to have the opportunity to make public comment. And like Charles said in the first presentation, it's really all about just getting the kids outdoors and speaking about these opportunities. Thank you for opening up 3A North after the virus. And even though it coincided with the low water levels, the dry March and the virus were 2 things that were kind of out of our hands, but I appreciate you opening it back up so that those camp owners could get out there and check it out. With the Python Bowl, January 10th through the 19th, I'm glad we had a good participation rate and removed some snakes, but a lot of the areas that were in the Python Bowl, Rocky Glades, Frog Pond, Southern Glades, they year-round have hardly any access to them. And you got an army of folks down here that would like nothing more than to remove some of these pythons. But it's really difficult to park your car and walk 2 miles down a levee at night to hopefully locate a python and drag it back to the car. these pythons, we all know, are difficult due to the cryptic nature. And in the last March recreation meeting, I think Bishop put it best. He said, we made the pigs an invasive species. We took away the size and bag limits, and where folks had access, we've almost eliminated the pigs. With the pythons, you don't need a permit required year round. You can eliminate these snakes, and folks will do it for free on their own dime. But you got to give people access to these areas, and it's going to take quite a few times of riding around out there until you spot them. But you will come across them if you're in a vehicle at night. And most of the contractors use a vehicle. I don't think any contractors are out there walking 2 miles to spot snakes. So I just wanted to comment on the access problem that we have down towards where I live in Homestead, Southern Glades, Rocky Glades, Frog Pond, and also the district land along the C-111 canal is pretty much walk-in only. And the gates being open for 9 days during the Python Bowl is not enough access to get rid of this snake problem. Thank you.
Appreciate your comment.
Next, I have Mike Milton.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening. Just want to thank you all for putting this on and putting this on Zoom and allowing the public to comment. Just want to say, thank you for all the Python programs that we have going on. I'm glad to hear that the Python Bowl wasn't just like a one-off thing because we had the Super Bowl down here. That it's going to happen on a yearly basis. So I'm happy about that. And I had a question on that toolbox slide. You put a couple different other methods of capturing pythons. Are there in place now or in the near future to do any of that Judas snake or sentinel snake, I think they call it, where they don't call her the snake obviously because it's hard to call her, but they put the telemetry thing in it and they track it down. Is the district doing that, or is there a plan in the near future to do that? So that's all I had to say. So thank you.
Sure, I appreciate your question. So we now call those programs Scout Snake programs. And the district is not directly participating in these programs, but we are supporting 2 programs, one run by the National Park Service, primarily out of Big Cypress National Preserve. And we're also supporting the Southwest Nature Conservancy out in Collier County, who is also doing some telemetred scout snake programs. Appreciate your question.
Next, I have
Okay,
Mike Elfenbein.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Yvette. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi, Yvette. I wanted to say one to you. You're the unsung hero of the district. Anytime anybody needs something or something has to happen, you're always there to pull the lever. And I think people forget that. So I wanted to make sure that I acknowledged it. Newton, you're doing a great job. And the Python folks, you're doing a fantastic job. And it's an important job that you're doing. Pythons are extremely invasive, as you know, and need to be removed from the system. But my concern is that we're not doing enough collectively. And I don't mean that at the agency level. I mean it as allowing as much participation from stakeholders as possible. I've mentioned this to the commission in the past, and I'd like to mention it to you for consideration. And I'd like to offer you my assistance if you welcome it. My proposal is this: in the winter months or the dry season, we tend to have colder weather, which gives us an opportunity to find pythons either sunning themselves or a little less active. And I think that if we combine the winter months and the dry season and those conditions with prescribed fire to remove some of that vegetation and do what's necessary in the system, and then somehow allow sportsmen with their off-road vehicles, ATVs, side-by-sides, airboats, full tracks, collect them in a large group 200, 300 sportsmen at a time, plan this out in advance, maybe a 10, 15, 20,000 acre piece of conservation area or land, and then set these individuals up in a grid pattern and work it for a day or two. I don't know that it will work better than what you're doing, but it would do a lot, I think, to one, identify whether it works. Two, if it works, it might be really good. But three, it'll give the agencies an opportunity to see the value of sportsmen and including sportsmen in the initiative to remove these pythons from the system. One of the speakers mentioned the opportunity for camp owners or recreational or sportsmen to be more involved. And I think you guys are missing the boat by not enlisting the army of sportsmen who know these habitats like the back of their hand to help you to remove these pythons from the system outside of your paid program. So if you would consider that and allow me to help you, I would be grateful for that. Thank you.
Hi, I appreciate those comments, Mr. Elfenbein. You brought up a couple topics there. So I sit on a interagency panel for the Interagency Python Management Plan, where we're trying to come up with a statewide management plan for pythons. And indeed, part of that plan, we intend to engage sportsmen like yourself and other stakeholders more in python management. The second issue brought up was putting people around wildfires or prescribed burns. I've heard this proposal and it's being discussed internally. I will say we have some safety concerns with people getting in the way of wildfire management operations or prescribed burn operations. And there have been few pythons observed during these fire events, but it's being discussed internally, and I appreciate your comments.
So I think I might have misstated what I was getting at. Not for sportsmen to be present when the fire is present, but it would be a two-tier program where it would take some coordination and obviously weather would have to cooperate and you'd have to have a lot of things lined up. But if you did, let's just say for example, if you did a prescribed fire in late December or early January with the intentions of doing the python removal in mid to late January, where we typically have the right conditions for that, that was what I was getting at. But I understand the safety concerns with having people on the ground during fire events. So no, that wasn't my intention.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We're talking about it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Elfenbein. Next is John Rozier. Mr. Rozier, please unmute. Mr. Rozier, can you please unmute yourself? If you're using a phone, please.
I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Just recently, I'm working with a contractor out in the conservation area, and we were just talking, and they killed 8 pythons in the last month or so out there, but he didn't want to report it and was worried that, oh, they might say something. And I think this is still going on where technically we can kill pythons all year. I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that.
Yes,
but there's
sir.
a stigma with a lot of people that they can only do it during this, or they think they can only do it during the Python challenge. And they're also afraid, oh, they're going to want all this information and things like that. So I think between the district and the FWC, they really need to, I don't want to say loosen the rules, because, I realize there's reasons why we don't want guns used and stuff like that. But we need to get it out that if you see python, kill it. And then it's good to let everybody, the agencies, know so that we could get an idea of where we might have another little cluster of pythons living. It's so funny because we were talking about it the other day. And like I said, he said they killed 8 of them. One of them was like 10 foot long. And they found a skin of one they found a 15-foot skin out there. So it just goes to show you they're not only in the park are in the cypress, but they're all the way up here in our water conservation areas up on the north end of the conservation area. So just overall, like I said, it'd be nice if we kind of enforce that thing. Hey, if you see them, you need to kill them, no matter what time the year is, you know, and stuff like that. I understand it has to be done humanely. We all went through that a long time ago. Don't have a problem with that, but I believe there's still a lot of pythons being killed that you guys don't know about, and it would be good information for y'all to have.
Yeah,
Yes,
I really appreciate the comment, and it emphasizes that you really can't have too much public outreach and public education. And both the district and the FWC are trying to ramp up efforts towards that goal, that common goal. I appreciate the comment, and yeah, we can always try to do better to get the word out and let people know what those regulations are.
Next, we have Mr. Richard Martinez, and followed by James Erskine, followed by Mr. Rozier.
Yes, regarding NPS and National Park and Big Cypress, are you allowed to humanely remove them in Everglades National Park or in Big Cypress when it's not a hunting season? And by humanely removing them, what methods does that entail?
So that's a good question, and I know that's been evolving over time. I don't know if you're allowed to remove a member of the public, if you're able to remove a snake from National Park Service land or not. That would be, I'm an expert on more on district properties and as the rules relate to our contractors, but I don't know what the rules are for National Park Service lands for general members of the public, but I will look that up.
I believe the answer to that question is no.
I think so, but I know that the laws have changed over recently, but
the park has their own contractors. And quite frankly, there's a lot of snakes in the park, and there will always be a lot of snakes in the park.
Next, I have Mr. James Erskine.
Hi, Yvette. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Newton, thank you very much for hosting the meeting today with the district. One thing I'd just like to follow up on some of these comments here. Mike, great presentation on the python ball and some of the work that's going on to help eradicate pythons and manage pythons, help manage pythons in the area. A few things that were brought up. Mike, just as Mr. Kirkland said, Mike Elfenbein, we hear you on working with stakeholders, and certainly our interagency Python management group is working with stakeholders in a number of different ways. And if it wasn't for the stakeholder support and all the folks we have out there working on the ground for pythons, we certainly wouldn't have that success that Mr. Kirkland put up on his slide presentation. But I'd like to call attention just a few specific things that were brought up. And one was about contractors finding pythons. And I think it's good for this group to know, and especially anybody in the group that's involved with contracting, that one of the things our Everglades team does over at FWC is review permits that come either submitted by the Water Management District or come through the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And in that permit review, part of that process is reaching out to biologists and subject matter experts with all the different species and land management areas. So when we have permits or construction projects or activities that run through our Everglades team and they're in areas where pythons are likely to be found, we often add in information and language asking for both the reporting, photography, remove the pythons from the area, and that we want them reported back to us from the contractors on a voluntary basis so we can continue to track that and gain that information from that venue. And there is a lot of construction. As Everglades restoration moves forward, we're getting more and more construction in and around the areas that many folks may consider python, where the python density or they're more likely to encounter a python. Another component that was brought up about that was when and where you can take a snake. Now, Everglades National Park does have, and national park lands were brought up. They have been the Department of the Interior has been a great partner in these programs. And FWC's Executive Order 2017 in spring 2020 added 3 new properties where lethal take of non-native reptiles can be authorized, and that is Big Cypress WMA, Okaloochie's OK Slough, and the A1 FEB, which is a district land, of course. So in terms of National Park Service, in terms of the Department of the Interior properties or NPS properties, some of them are going to be different. Everglades National Park has contracted agents. Big Cypress WMA, you can take non-native reptiles. It would be, to the best of my knowledge here from the executive order. So those are just a couple things I wanted to touch on. Mike, thanks for the great presentation. And anybody out there on the web that's listening, that's participated in this program, we really appreciate your support. Over.
Thanks, James.
Next, I have Justin Bingham, followed by Mike Elfenbein.
Yeah, can you hear me? This is Justin.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to, I was chimed in to talk about exactly what James Erskine was covering. I'm Justin Bingham, the South Region Public Hunting Areas Biologist for FWC. And I just wanted to echo what James Erskine was saying. It is true that because of Executive Order 2017, that did add Big Cypress WMA to the list of properties in the South region that allow for the take of non-native reptiles. So the take is year-round, and it's similar to the other WMAs in that outside of established hunting seasons, those non-native reptiles can be taken by methods other than firearms. And then during established hunting seasons, if there are any firearms that are legal to take during that season, legal to use to take wildlife during game species during that season, then those firearms would also be allowed to take non-native reptiles during those seasons as well. So you just have to look at the WMA brochures. For instance, if you're in general gun season, then any gun that is legal during general gun season to use for game species would also be legal to use to take non-native reptiles. And because Big Cypress has been added to the executive order, that means that a hunting license and management area permit are not required if you're only attempting to remove non-native reptiles. If you are pursuing hunting, attempting to take, I guess I should say, game species, then you do need a hunting license and management area permit. So hopefully that clarifies it. That's a lot of information to take in there, but basically what's the most important thing to know is that the regulations are the same now for Big Cypress as they are for the other WMAs in South Region.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, I knew that there were some rules changing, so I was hesitant to respond to that question. I appreciate you guys being on the line.
Thank you. I have Mike Elfenbein.
Thanks, Yvette. Justin, he's catching on quick. He answered what I was going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other public speakers.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation, Mike.
Thanks, everyone.
A very interesting subject. As you know, this is going to be a forever project, and unfortunately. Next on the agenda, we have Mike Cheek, who's a scientist at the Water Management District, and he's going to discuss the Kissimmee River Restoration Project. The restoration project of the Kissimmee River is one of the largest in the world, and has been a very big success to date. It has been tested recently by this heavy rainstorm that we've had. But I'm sure Mike can discuss where we are today and where we're going. Welcome, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Newton. I'm an environmental scientist on the Kissimmee River Restoration Project, and I'll give you the latest on what's going on out there. As Newton said, it's been a long-term project, so we're at an exciting threshold here. The project's wrapping up in spring of next year, so I'll give you a brief project overview for those who haven't heard of it. I'll give you a construction update and talk about phase 2 and 3 repairs and why we're calling them repairs, and then talk about the S69 weir at the southern terminus of the project and how that affects current access. And then I'll give you just some brief information on the interim period ecological responses we've seen during the construction period. So that's from 2001 up till now. It's been a long construction phase. And then as we wrap up next spring, I'll talk about the current and future management challenges we have out there. So for those of you who aren't familiar, this is an aerial shot from the 50s of the Kissimmee River before it was channelized in the 60s. So this is what it looked like prior to channelization. You have this long meandering main river channel that snaked about 100 miles from Lake Kissimmee to Lake Okeechobee. And you had a 1 to 2 mile wide floodplain that would inundate seasonally in the wet season and be flooded for up to 7 months of the year, and then sheet flow south slowly to Lake Okeechobee over a matter of a week or so. And in the 60s, in 69, the channelization was completed. And this was a highly successful drainage project. It essentially drained that 1 to 2 mile wide floodplain. And now all the water can be managed in this 30-foot deep, 300-foot wide channel that you see in the photo there. The 1 to 2 mile wide floodplain was now completely drained. It no longer inundated. Fish and wildlife were completely absent from the system after this occurred. You have just dry pasture on the edges of the C-38 canal. And the water no longer sheet flowed in that slow meandering form down towards Lake Okeechobee. Now it kind of beelined in a matter of a few days through 5 water control structures from Kissimmee to Okeechobee. And as you may have heard, it's a state and federal partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Water Management District, with the Corps doing the engineering design and construction, and the district responsible for land acquisition and the restoration evaluation, which is the group I'm part of. And what we've done so far, we've backfilled almost the entire 22 miles of C-38 canal that were planned to be backfilled. We've reconnected 40 miles of historic natural channel. We've removed 2 water control structures over on the diagram on the right, S65B and X65C. And the remaining missing component, besides the remaining construction, is to mimic historic inflows out of Lake Kissimmee in what's called the Headwaters Regulation Schedule. And that is due for next wet season, 2021. So it's pretty exciting after all these years. And then the Restoration Evaluation Program, which is what I'm a part of, will monitor ecologically whether or not we're meeting our restoration goal. This is just a map emphasizing that we're only restoring roughly the middle third of the river. So by no means is the entire river being restored. The areas that have been complete is roughly from the Avon Park Bombing Range and Kissimmee Prairie Preserve State Park south to about the Istapoga Canal boat ramp. All that construction is done. And the repairs I'm talking about today are from roughly the Istapoga Canal boat ramp south to the CSX Railroad Bridge down near S65D lock. As you see at the bottom there, phase 2 repairs will be done by spring of next year. Phase 3 repairs just wrapped up last month. If any of you who use the area are traveling along Highway 98 there south of the bridge, that construction contract just was finalized last month. And then the S69 Weir is due for this fall, a completion date. And just briefly, just the anatomy of the backfill. It's pretty straightforward, although there's a lot of logistics involved, but you can see there at the top, the 1 to 2 mile wide floodplain there was drained by the C-38 canal in the center, and all the spoil that was removed from the C-38 canal in the 60s was pushed right adjacent to the C-38 canal. So it's still there. And the Army Corps of Engineers contractors are pushing that backfill back into the C-38 and then thereby directing water down this historic channel off on the left of the screen. And then you get that seasonal flood pulse cycle returning because the water can no longer go down the C-38 canal. The river channel overflows its banks in the wet season, and then that whole wide floodplain sheet flows south. So that's just the basics of how we're restoring the area with construction. And what I've referred to as repairs, this is just an example, kind of a time series of what happened during El Nino. This area was completed. On the left, you see degraded spoil that was pushed into the C-38 canal. On the right, where it says backfilled C-38 canal, everything looked good. This is May 18th, 2016. That was level with the surrounding floodplain. And then less than 11 days later, we had this massive amount of flow coming down the river at almost 8,000 cubic feet per second, just overwhelmed the system, went right over this brand new backfill that hadn't vegetated again and caused significant damage. And so this next photo just shows the latest repair. The photo's a little old. It's about a month old. So this has since been completely backfilled. And there's been riprap limestone boulders placed at either end of this to prevent it from happening again if we get a big wet season this season, because it's not revegetated. We're kind of coming right up on the edge of the beginning of the wet season when we finish this. And then we had a 1-2 punch after El Nino, those incredibly high dry season flows. We were followed in 2017 with Irma. This is tree line to tree line inundation of the floodplain there, about 2 miles wide. This water in this shot is about 4 to 5 feet deep on average and just sheet flowing south to Lake Okeechobee. And again, that overwhelmed a portion of backfill that was just complete called Reach 2. So in the photo on the left, the historic channel should be going off here to the right, but this after Irma, the short circuited over the backfill and began to erode the new backfill. And the picture on the right shows the repair that was just completed in May of this year. They backfilled all the areas that had eroded out and then added this limestone riprap barrier, which is, you can see here just to zoom in of that, to redirect the water down the main historic channel. So we shouldn't see that happen again. And another just example of repairs is south of the 98 bridge. Again, Hurricane Irma overwhelmed the system, and there was this return ditch and berm. It was a feature that was overlooked in earlier engineering contracts. And so all the water was funneled after Irma just into this narrow strip from the uplands here and the live oaks down to where it says spoil degrade. And this fresh backfill began to erode from downstream to up and eroded this area. So the next photo just shows how that was repaired. This berm return ditch backfill was leveled to floodplain elevation. Now when water comes downstream, it'll be allowed to flow into Chandler Slough out here in the corner of the photo, which it wasn't allowed to do before. And that repair was backfilled. And again, there was limestone riprap boulders that were placed at these bends in the river near the backfill to prevent blowouts again. So it's a completely different scenario under this wet season, so we shouldn't see that impact. And the final construction contract, this is the southern terminus of the project. It's called the S69 weir. This massive weir has 3 sides. It's just control water just above floodplain elevation. So when the water comes up about a foot on the floodplain, it will start to sheet flow over this northern leg of the weir. And as it continues to increase, it'll start to sheet flow over these side arms. And this bypass canal is just a temporary feature for construction to keep the water going around the weir. And the river channel is about to be opened up at this location in the middle of the picture where it says historic river channel. The contractor is just about to remove a land bridge that's there, and that channel will begin to receive flow for the first time in about a year. So as far as access, this is the current boat access map. For those of you who are interested, all the areas in green are now accessible in the main river channel. So really the only blockage currently is at the S69 weir, just upstream of the S69 weir near Chandler Slough. And then down here by the CSX Railroad Bridge, there's safety barriers, so you can't get through there. And they do still want people to stay off the backfill in this Reach 2 stretch. So from the 98 bridge all the way up to almost the Istapoga Canal boat ramp, or even past that, there still could be some unbackfilled areas, and they want to keep airboaters off that until that area is complete this fall. And the only change in this map that might occur in the fall for those hunters using the area that are interested in going out August, September period is the contractors will have to put a floating bridge or a barge just north of the 98 bridge here. So this area will be cut off to access this fall, although it's not currently blocked. And you can ask questions about this access at the end if you have any. Just quickly talk about some of the ecological responses we've seen so far. We created initially 25 restoration expectations, metrics that we could measure success of the project on. And I'll just talk briefly about avian communities, which is what I'm familiar with, what I work on the project. And of those 25, there's about 9 for which we are not collecting data until the project is complete. There's 10 that have shown a neutral or negative response during the interim period. And there's 6 that have shown a positive response. And one of those is wading birds and waterfowl. So I'll talk about that. This is a great shot, kind of a summary slide of how the backfill affects birds on the floodplain. You can see in the background, the C-38 canal, not backfilled in this photo. It has since been. In the foreground, this is backfilled C-38 canal from 2001. And you can see this nice wet prairie vegetation, shallow marsh. And in the foreground, those white dots are a massive flock of foraging wading birds, okay, over 1,000 individuals. And they're literally foraging on top of what was the C-38 canal, that 30-foot deep canal. So now they have this great shallow marsh, able to look for aquatic invertebrates, small fish. So it's just a neat summary. I love that picture. This is from 2005 during one of the aerial surveys. And this just shows the data reflecting that initial pulse of wading birds on the floodplain. You can see after phase 1 was complete in 2001, we had this incredible surge of wading bird use on the floodplain. Our expectation is this dotted line here in the middle. We're expecting over 30 birds per square kilometer to be present after restoration. And as you can see, in most years, we've seen well above the restoration expectation of 30 birds. We've consistently been at about 40 birds per square kilometer as a long-term running mean. You can see this low point here, 2007, that was a drought year. There's just no water on the floodplain, so there's no birds out there at all. And again, this is reflected with waterfowl. So even though we don't have the hydrology right, just backfilling that C-38 canal allowed these birds to come back in enough abundance to meet the goal in most years. Again, well above 4 birds per square kilometer. We're averaging about 12 birds per square kilometer on the ducks. As far as species richness, we have seen about 5 species return that weren't seen very often in the channelized period, although we're not seeing them in the frequency that we'd like to. So, for example, you'll just see a shoveler here and there, but not on an annual basis during my specified bird surveys. So we're not quite reaching that goal of 13 species of ducks. Where anyone who's been out there and used the area, you notice it's only dominated by blue-winged teal and mottled ducks. This is a shot from the floodplain during a March spring migration, a huge flock of about 400 teal using the floodplain. And so this is just a shot from the initial construction, and it looked great initially. We loved how it looked. This hemi-marsh, kind of 50-50 open water versus emergent aquatic vegetation type habitat. And the bird numbers reflected on this. There's plenty of shallow water marsh for them to find aquatic invertebrates, small fish. And what we've seen though since 2001 is a bit of a clogging up of the system. Anyone who's been out there over the years has noticed these big expansions of some invasive exotic grasses such as West Indian marsh grass. This is becoming a much more common scene out there. Unfortunately, these huge monocultures of exotic grasses. This is another shot. In the foreground, you see limpo grass, which is a little shorter. In the middle area, you see paraggrass, which anyone has been in that paraggrass, it's this incredibly dense thatch that builds up. And believe it or not, there's about a foot of water in this photo on the floodplain. But if you're a wading bird or a duck flying over this, you're not going to land there because you just, number one, can't physically access it. And then number two, when you get to the water there, can you even catch a prey organism? Is there anything in there? There's some indications that dissolved oxygen can be affected by these dense invasive grasses. And in the background, you have mature Carolina willow, which is much more abundant than it was in the historical system. So we think that's becoming a problem, and particularly because large willow, even though hydrology is going to change next year, it might just do fine with greater inundation. Now that it's large and robust, it could just do fine. However, we're hoping the exotic grasses will be a little more impacted by the increase in hydrology. And this is just showing how the Carolina willow has come in on what was former spoil So this was degraded and pushed in to the circle or the yellow area on the left. That's the backfilled C38 canal. So the willow really liked those degraded areas, and then the exotic grasses seemed to have liked the backfill areas because of a slightly higher elevation. And again, a water bird flying over this habitat is probably only going to land in these open water areas you see in the top right. So not a lot of available habitat in this particular shot. So we think that's becoming a problem. And it's these dots on the floodplain are foraging wading birds. And there's evidence from my foraging flights that they actively avoid these wet shrub and exotic grass areas, which are shown in black. You can see there's not a lot of dots in these black polygons on the floodplain map. And just to illustrate the flashiness of the system that we've had during the interim period, there's been an unnatural distribution, timing, and duration of water in the floodplain during the interim period. This is August 2014. We have discharged about 3,000 CFS, pretty typical for the mid-wet season. And then only 11 days later, we went down to 300 CFS. The river channel dropped below its banks. The floodplain began to drain off the majority of the shallow water habitat. And it was a complete dramatic drop in water levels within only 11 days. And this would never have happened historically under the natural condition. And so we're seeing this flashiness on a regular basis out there until we get that headwaters regulation schedule in place. And wading bird breeding is timed very closely on the recession in the dry season. And what we've seen with this radical changes in water levels is a boom bust cycle where the wading birds, during one of my surveys, they're just loving that fast recession because everything's been concentrated, all their prey has been concentrated in these drying pools within 11 days. So big fish, big and crayfish and everything is in there. So they love it temporarily, but then you come out the next week or the next month on a survey and all those pools have now been picked over. The birds have moved elsewhere and you're dry the rest of the dry season. And so any wading birds queuing in on nesting with that prey abundance have now looked elsewhere for that. So this is the last big key component of the project. Headwaters regulation schedule is the line in blue at the top. The current interim schedule is the line in red below. And what this is, the regulation schedule is anytime the stage in Lakes Kissimmee, Hatchetahaw, and Cypress surpass this red line currently, water managers have to let flood control releases out of those lakes to get water back down below the red line for health and human safety. But as you can see, the blue line will give us a full 1.5 feet higher of storage throughout most of the year. These are months along the bottom here. So we'll have significantly much greater storage in the wet season, and that water should be able to be more evenly distributed throughout the rest of the year. So that's a big, exciting change coming up. And the floodplain for the users out there, this is just a graphic showing what kind of vegetation to expect. And that pink area in the middle is deep water, long hydro period marsh. So it'll be flooded for up to 7 months out of the year, greater than 1 foot deep. And then the yellow areas are the wet prairie, shallower marshes that are shorter hydro period on the adjacent floodplain as you head up towards the oak line. And they'll be flooded for up to 3 months out of the year between 0 and 1 foot deep. And another positive note is that we're reintroducing fire onto the floodplain, hopefully to impact those exotic grasses out there in some form besides just the hydrology. We're hoping that in combination with the change in hydrology, prescribed burning may have an impact on opening some of these dense monocultures up. So I'm doing some vegetation monitoring on that of the prescribed burn that Justin Nolte and land management are doing out there. They've done about 6 or 7 now that have come into the floodplain a little bit. So that's great news on that front. But anecdotally, a lot of these exotics without the hydrological change come back really quickly after some of these burns, if there's not other change going on. So in summary, restoration is actually wrapping up by spring of next year, believe it or not. Anyone who's been involved with this project over the years. The headwaters regulation schedule is thought to be implemented by next wet season. That is the current schedule. And that's when we'll see the real significant change, and we'll start to evaluate how successful the project is following that headwaters regulation schedule with our ecological monitoring of those 25 metrics. So that's it for me. If you guys have any questions, I'm ready.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to take a little moment here. I'm sure it's almost 10 years ago when this progress was moving along quite nicely. It's a great exercise, the Kissimmee restoration. And there was a few of us that told the people involved in this restoration that if they did not burn these areas, they were going to end up with willows and grass. And now you're telling us that, yes, that's exactly what happened, because prescribed fire excluded from the floodplain during the past 16 years. If you listen to the people who actually go out on these properties, you can actually learn something. This restoration has become a real problem because we now have willows and grass on areas that would have been marshes if they had been properly flooded deep enough to prevent the grass from growing and the willows, and burned. So I'm glad to see that after 16 years, that has been recognized. And of course, what has happened is we lost what was a fast-growing, healthy marsh full of ducks, and we lost it. And I sometimes express my unhappiness because the so-called scientists and experts don't listen to the marshmen and the people who are out hunting and fishing on these properties. And this is a prime example of what could have been prevented if simple, good practices had been put in place years ago that followed the wet season, dry season, Florida process, which includes burning. So I hope that we've learned our lesson. Yvette, if you have any other public comments, I'll leave it at that.
Yes, I have Mr. Elfenbein, followed by Mr. Ritter, followed by Nyla Pipes.
Great presentation, Mike. Thank you. Two questions I had. One is the 25 indicators that you mentioned. At what point in time did you start measuring that? Was that done in 01 when you started, or did that just start now?
Well, we collected baseline data prior to 2001 construction. So we had a period of about 2 years where we collected baseline data with which we'd note change after restoration. And then, like I said, some of those metrics have not been monitored at all during this interim period. The construction period's gone on, much longer than anticipated. But basically the big restoration evaluation program kicks in after headwaters, because to kind of address what Newton was saying, the construction, just one component, really 50% of the component of restoring ecological integrity is just the construction itself, and the other 50% is changing that headwaters inflow. So it's a very complicated.
It's been 20 years, right? More or less. What kind of time frame would you expect to see more of those indicators result as a positive? Are you thinking 5 years, 10 years, another 20 years?
Well, it'll depend on the metric that you're measuring. Obviously, things like invertebrates and small fish will respond very quickly. When you're monitoring vegetation, that's going to take 2 to 3, even 4 years in some places. And of course, a lot of it's related to climate. If you have a series of dry years starting, say, next wet season, that will impact the change in vegetation. So it really depends on the metric you're looking at. Obviously, the physical metrics of flow, dissolved oxygen, those will be impacted immediately. Littoral vegetation on the river channel banks, that's an immediate response. You start to see that vegetation ripping off the banks, and historic channels unclogged, dissolved oxygen increases. So it really depends on the metric, but I'd say in general, you'll see a response within 5 years. If you looked at those bird graphs I showed, you can see there's a very strong pulse initially, and then we also dropped, and now we've kind of stabilized at what appears to be some kind of equilibrium, and that equilibrium will likely change now with the change in hydrology. So it's been a long process in the interim period, and had we known it would take 19 years of construction to begin with, we might have had a lot of different management programs going on in the meantime. If you set out saying, okay, this is going to take 20 years, what are we going to do in the interim period to keep the habitat in a good state? So, but what we think is the biggest driver here is hydrology, and then the prescribed burning is a bonus on top of the change in hydrology.
Okay. Thank you. And my next question, this might be out of your wheelhouse, but there might be someone here from the district that could answer to this, right? So one of the big factors of nutrient pollution coming into Lake Okeechobee is phosphorus. And the majority of that, I think something like 90+% comes from the northern basins. I know that the area where this restoration occurred is very close to areas in the state where phosphorus is mined from the ground. So my guess is that much of that degraded spoil and the earth inside those canals probably held or hold large amounts of phosphorus. Is there some measure as to how much the Kissimmee River and the associated restoration project are contributing to that phosphorus? If so, is that going to continue for an added period of time? And then are those nutrients contributing negatively to the growth of invasive species in the rehabilitated area?
Yeah, those are great questions. And yeah, we don't have all the answers to that, but we have noticed pulses in phosphorus at the bottom end of the project during construction. And sometimes it's hard to extrapolate whether that is due to the pulses and rainfall. Obviously, rainfall increases phosphorus loads into the system. And if it's happening simultaneously with the construction, we have seen increases in, or temporary increases in phosphorus loads. And then simultaneously during a lot of this construction too, we've also seen higher inputs up in Lake Kissimmee. So at the headwaters, there's been some changes in phosphorus coming into the system. And so any filtration or benefits of the restoration project itself are a little difficult to parse out in terms of if you're having changes on the input side upstream and you're seeing increases in phosphorus coming into the system while simultaneously seeing just flat phosphorus levels coming downstream of the project. You're assuming there's some retention going on there, but a lot of that's shown in the South Florida ecosystem reports. Those are available online. That shows all the phosphorus levels and measurements that are recorded along the river.
Thank you, Michael. That was a good answer. This is Drew Bartlett. And we will be having more water quality workshops through the summer for this area, presenting data and drilling down on data and information. So we can get into some good detailed discussions with respect to phosphorus sources and what's contributing to the loading we're seeing at Lake Okeechobee.
Great. Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Mike. And just to be clear, those nutrient levels are contributing to the excessive growth of non-natives?
That's unknown. Yeah, it's really, we just don't know that. Yeah, we don't have information on phosphorus levels on the floodplain and how that would affect the exotic grasses. The exotic grasses have just thrived, I believe, under the flashiness of the hydrology during the interim period. And even that's just a hypothesis. We can't prove that in fact is the cause of the invasion of the exotic grasses. But we do know that West India marsh grass could be flooded out, like after Hurricane Irma. We had a lot of it killed off with increase in hydrology. And parag grass will also probably recede in the deepest areas. So there's a lot of interactions going on there. So you can't attribute it to one single factor with the invasion of the grasses. Kind of like Newton pointed out that if we had prescribed fire during this interim period, you wouldn't have such a bad invasive grass issue. And that may not be the case because we don't know exactly why it's expanded in this area. So it's more of a working hypothesis that the hydrology is the largest driver. So we should see some change after the hydrology changes, hopefully for the positive.
Awesome. I leave you with the words of the great Mary Ann Martin, burn, baby, burn.
Gary Ritter.
Yes. Hey, Mike, great presentation. I kind of want to follow up on the comment that our other Mike made. And I might suggest that the inundation of the floodplain, now that you've got a great deal of restoration area, you've flooded a great deal of pasture and a great deal of pasture grasses. So I would suspect as those pasture grasses die off and the floodplain becomes more natural, then you're going to get a spike in nutrient just from the die off of those pasture grasses. But there's no doubt in my mind that there's tremendous ecological benefits from this restoration project. Not only from water storage, but from a water quality standpoint. I always, for the past almost 50 years now, that river has been channelized, and it's been a channel. And so, I always get the question, living here in Okeechobee, where folks used to be able to navigate from a recreational standpoint, navigate from Lake Okeechobee to Lake Kissimmee. And as it stands right now, prior to you increasing the stage in Lake Kissimmee to about 1.5 feet, the restored river channel has been extremely flashy, and if they wanted to go from Lake Okeechobee to Lake Kissimmee, they had to be extremely careful, even if they wanted to put in a Istapoga Canal and go up from there. And I'm just kind of wondering, do you see the recreational opportunities changing from one maybe of navigation of mid-sized to pontoon boats to more of kayaks and canoes and airboats and more of a hunting, duck hunting and things like that, versus just recreational boating up through that river channel once the entire project is completed and you're able to raise the level of Lake Kissimmee?
Well, I think the ability to go out in an outboard motor will certainly, the number of days will go up under the headwaters regulation schedule, so there'll be a lot more access, or the main channel will be deeper for a longer portion of the year. So it'll really depend on what time of year you're going out there. But and you saw that vegetation map I showed. A lot of that broadleaf marsh habitat will be inundated almost 1 foot deep, or up over 1 foot deep for up to 7 months is the expectation. So all that habitat will be obviously available for airboating, kayaks, things like that. It's still a shallow marsh system, though. In general, most outboard motors are restricted just to the main river channel. And but yeah, as far as navigation on the channel itself, too, it'll be subject to sandbars, down logs, trees like that. So there'll always have to be user caution going out there. It's a natural winding river, so it's going to have sandbar buildups and things like that. But in general, you'll have more access opportunities for more days out of the year in all different kind of boats.
Thanks, Mike.
Next, I have Nyla Pipes, followed by Paul Gray.
Mike Elf actually took a lot of my questions. I just want to reiterate the need to identify further some of the loading that's coming from the north into Lake Okeechobee. And I know that that's, been an ongoing conversation. I do know that when we saw those channels, some of the work that was washed out, when we saw that happen with Irma, I know that that was, in my opinion, it was a pretty direct impact that was pretty obvious to, the spike in nutrient loading to Lake Okeechobee. Living to the south of this and living along the St. Lucie River side of things, I will tell you that this is a exciting project, one that I am following pretty closely and have been since I began talking about water, gosh, I don't know how many years ago now, with you all. And I think that it's really interesting. And I just want to kind of remind people that when we talk about restoration, it's not just a matter of putting some plans in place and then everything is fine. There really are still a lot of unknowns. And I think you've done a really great job presenting some of that today. And, you know, science is, as much as we rely on it, it's also imperfect and ongoing. And so I'm really excited to see how this improves the entire system. I just, you know, wanted to make sure that we do continue those conversations about the water quality to the north. And I think that this project is really imperative, and I'm excited to see it come to completion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nyla. Yeah, like I said, I'm certainly not the expert on phosphorus on the project. The wading birds and waterfowl are a much higher level organism that's kind of responding to the lower trophic levels of what's going on out there. So I would defer to others on that in my group to talk about phosphorus. And to be honest, when the project was initiated, I mean, this has been going on since the 80s, really. The phosphorus loads to Lake O were not necessarily at the top of everyone's mind. So I know that's become a much more important issue lately. So I'll leave that to the experts in terms of the project itself, how it impacts those loads. But I know we are trying to increase our monitoring of phosphorus in the floodplain because obviously it's a hot button issue. So we are looking at expanding some monitoring stations out there, to my knowledge.
Next, I have Paul Gray.
Now?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Paul Gray from Audubon, Florida. I know we're all excited about this project because it has a lot of promise for wonderful things. I'm especially excited because I only live about 3 miles from the floodplain that's being restored. So it's really great for me. One thing I just wanted to alert everybody is as part of the original agreement between the state and the federal government, the feds required that the state make a water reservation for the project. And the water reservation essentially says you have to make sure there's enough water in the Kissimmee chain of lakes that we're going to flow down this river to make this river restoration work. If we restore the floodplain, but Orlando sucks up all of our water and it doesn't get wet, then we didn't succeed. And so the district is in the process of setting a water reservation right now. Comments are due on it on Monday the 23rd, although Monday is actually the 22nd, so I don't know if it's Monday the 22nd or Tuesday the 23rd, but anyway, whatever, we have about a week. And I urge people who have time to get on the district website. Basically, part of the reservation that they've proposed is they will not let any new straws get into Lake Kissimmee, Cypress or Hatchinahaw to suck the water out of there before we flow it down the river. We're going to let it go all the way up to 54 feet. It has restrictions on water take from the upper chain of lakes, Toho, East Toho, those lakes. And it's really important that we do this because for anybody who's been following the Central Florida Water Initiative, which is the Orlando Metroplex, there's 3 water management districts that are looking for water. And some of the projections are Orlando could grow by as much as 50% in the next 20 years. And they are going everywhere looking for water. And so it's really important at this time that we protect the water that's in the upper chain of lakes, because when Kissimmee goes up to 54 feet, Gardner Cobb Marsh is going to have way more flooding and way more marsh. When the water comes down the river, we're going to have more marsh. Of course, we need this water to refill Lake Okeechobee every summer and hopefully return that water back to the Everglades, what we're all trying to do. So I hope anybody who has time can get onto the district, and maybe you guys can post a link to the Kissimmee Water Reservation website. They've got a couple nice presentations where they show how they developed the reservation and what the parts of it are, and really encourage the district to do this because they've tried twice before to set a reservation, and quite frankly they get a lot of pushback from people up in the Orlando area who really want water and don't want, well, they want to get as much as they can, and we want to save as much as we can for ourselves. So please, anybody who can pitch in and support the district's efforts to set this reservation, I'd really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Mr. Cook, I have no additional public speakers.
Thank you very much. And Paul, thank you very much, Paul, for your comments. They're incredibly important to this discussion. And very much appreciated. Mike, thank you again. It's a long haul that this project has been going on. It's almost completed. It's an incredible success story. And I'm sure that after the time is spent running the different models and tests that are needed to the water reservations and depths and time and of the moving of the water through the system, that we'll get it right. But please, we need water to stop the growth of the exotics and fire. So thank you very much. Our next presenter is Jerry Krentz, and he will be talking about public use project updates. And this is one of the more interesting conversations that we will probably have tonight because the SDAs are on the agenda. So Jerry, welcome and good luck.
Thank you there, Newton. I'm going to go through several project updates here. And the first thing we'll talk about is our SDA refurbishment projects, where we have quite a few projects on the SDAs themselves. We might call them small construction projects. And we also have those in the, that'll affect our public use and our hunting that we go through this fall. And then we'll talk a little bit about SDA 1 West, our expansion area. And then we have hunting season proposed rule changes. We have a few changes. Hello? Okay. I got a few changes to hog season rules and a few changes to small game seasons. We'll go through that. And we'll talk a little bit about the L38 temporary plug. And I think under that subject, right down the road there is where the 2 boat ramps are that we were asked about earlier. So we'll touch on that. And then last, we'll get in a word about the EAA reservoir project and the A2 SDA, and talk just a minute about the design on that. Seems I'm trying to advance my slide, but it's not going anywhere. I clicked on it once.
Jerry, click on it again and you have control.
I like to think I have control, but
I can advance them for you. I'll take control back.
Thank you, Yvette.
You're welcome.
Yvette, let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. The SDA refurbishment projects, it's multiple projects over several years. And I'll talk about a couple of current projects we have and then outline future projects, but mostly just talk about what we expect this upcoming year. There's a lot of construction uncertainties, primarily because when we get our contractor on board, the contractor will then set a schedule with us so we know when he's going to do what exactly, and that will affect how our public use works around that. And we'll discuss the strategies that we have to kind of minimize those impacts of the construction to our public use. However, I just emphasize that, project purposes first is our most important thing, and we will have the construction go forward. Although we'll do our best to maintain our public use that we have, we will yield to construction where necessary, of course. And we'll talk about what we know is going to affect our hunting. And I threw in this sign about SDA 5 on Blumberg Road because this is just an example of what we did last year or 2 years ago. We had a construction project on SDA 5. And so we rerouted our traffic. Instead of coming in on the far west side of SDA 5, we returned to an old entrance and came in on the north side down Blumberg Road. For a few of those that used to go down Blumberg Road, it was like a little trip to the past. Can we go on the next slide, please, Yvette? Thanks. I think we got to go the other way. There we go. All right. We currently have 3 projects on SDA 1 East. Only one of them is really affecting our public use in the area, And that project will go on through the 2021 season that we're coming up on now. And if you look at STA 1 East, you can see a red line, dash line. And if you can see my mouse, you'll see the trucks will come in on the State Road 80 and go around the STA 1 East cell like that. Yep. And then out this way, back up north, out to County Road 880, sort of. That goes right through our old check station that we had for STA 1 West. And so we've had to close that check station, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the future. Also, our public use area used to go farther west and across the National Wildlife Refuge across here on a bike trail, but that's been closed because we're hauling on that road with dump trucks. So we can't have recreation and dump trucks together. It doesn't work. Let's go on to our next slide, Yvette. Oh, great, thanks. So let's talk about future projects. STA 1 West, just look at the list of projects on that STA 1 West. We've got like 7 projects that we're going to start. We'll actually start these projects later this year. And most of the projects are to the south. And if you look on the north end, you can see where it says F, or it says 5B, SAV. That cell is an SAV cell, and that's one of our primary cells for hunting. And we have a project on the south end of that cell, but we also have a haul route that runs across the north side of that cell and down the west side. So we really don't have a way to get in and out of there, and that the haul route will occur on Fridays and Saturdays and possibly Sundays. We don't really know when they're going to do that. That we will find out from the contractor. We'll discuss that in a minute. We hope to find out when that occurs, and then we'll try to do our hunts then. That'll come a little later. If we look at cells 1B and 2A and 2B down in this area, you can see that there are lots of structures, and they're going to be replaced. They're going to be removed. We're actually going to remove one levee and move it up farther north. That'll fix a lot of the flow that we have in the northern cells. Also in this area, we have at the top of this map, you'll see 2 little white dots. Those are areas where we could potentially have a concrete batch plant, and we'll find that out in the late fall. And the other one we'll use for our own check station. So we'll be able to work that out. We just have to know where the batch plant will go. If it goes on this end, we'll have to find out where it's going to go. All right, some uncertainties coming up. I think, Yvette, we can go to the next slide, please. And our future projects, we have in STA 2, we got projects in 2023. We got Cell 2. We got 4 projects that close Cell 2. And then in the future, we got a project that will close Cell 3. In Cell 2, when that's closed, we will put as many of the hunters in the other cells as possible, and probably move the hunt a little bit farther south in that STA as we have to. STA 5, we don't have anything coming up this hunting season coming up. So our public use and our hunting will stay the same then. Go on to the next slide, please. So the real uncertainty we have is that our contractors actually start in October or November. And during the first 30 days or so, they will provide us with a schedule of when they're going to do their work that we've asked them to do. From there, we will have to adjust our public use. So we'll have to work around that as much as we possibly can. The contractor is responsible to accomplish multiple projects within a given time. These projects typically are like adding riprap, They're going to level cells. They're going to fill ditches. They're going to replace culverts, and they're going to realign levees and realign canals. We actually have several years of this work coming up. Next slide, please. Yvette, can we go to the next slide? There we go. So we have a couple of strategies to try to minimize our impacts to the planned hunting that we have. The first one is we have gotten, the board has approved our use of One West expansion. And so where we have lost some hunting area in STA One West itself, we'll try to move some of our hunting over into that expansion area and absorb some of those losses as much as we possibly can. And for like waterfowl hunting, we're going to create One West and One West expansion as one whole public small game hunting area, and hope that we can put together one hunt out of that, out of those two areas, trying to use as much of the north as we can and use what we have in the One West expansion. And for the One West expansion area, we also have, that will become an alligator hunting area. And we will add that to the One West South alligator hunt, because the One West South alligator hunt has the least success than the north. And so we'll use that area and add it to the expansion area. We'll keep the quota the same, and so that'll help improve that hunt. Also, we're going to coordinate closely on the concrete batch plant location. I'll be involved in the review for where that locates, and it'll be an attempt on our part to keep a route through the batch plant on one side of it, because we have more land up there than we really need. We just have to organize it so that everybody gets to move around up there as we need to. But we'll have to just work on that, and hopefully that will work out for us. Yvette, let's go on to the next one. Thank you. What do we know is going to be affected? We know that One West waterfowl hunting will conflict with an established haul route. We'll soon learn in October or November if we can have hunting in that area or not. But initially, we're going to start off with our early teal season in September, and that will make sure we're set up with our parking and our check station and so forth to go ahead with waterfowl hunting. But we won't offer the initial hunts on opening days in November and December, because we'll have to see what the contractor is going to do before we can schedule hunts. We do not want to schedule hunts and then cancel them and have people choose a hunt and then not get to do it. We would rather take it off the board and offer it when we know we have it. And then we will put them to work, and then we'll be able to put people in there. STA One West alligator season. If the contractor comes in early towards the end of October, it looks like we might miss a little bit of that season near the end, but we've already drawn those quotas, and our data has shown us over the years that most hunters catch their alligators the first weekend that they have an opportunity to do so, which for the SDAs is usually the weekends in August. So by letting hunters know that the last end of the season may be cut off, we think most of the hunters will be able to take care of their business earlier in the year, and we would rather do that than cancel the hunt altogether. Let's go on to the next one. I feel like I missed a bullet earlier in one of my presentation slides. Can we go back one more? Yes. No, there was there it is. Thank you. On our yeah, we have to schedule our hunts carefully to avoid canceling them, like I just discussed about a little bit. We've got alligator hunts. Where an alligator hunt goes on, we can adjust the levees that are open, and we have quite a few levees in each hunt area, so that we can afford to close one or two levees to hunting, and that we'll be able to work around that. We often do that for snail kite nesting and so forth anyway, so that can work out really well. With the waterfowl hunts, we have to be a lot more careful because when someone draws a quota, they get a 4 or a 6 hour period to go hunting, and that's their time to go. So we need to make sure that they actually get that. So we're going to be careful about scheduling our hunts. And if necessary, we'd rather lower the quota than cancel the hunt. And we also can move some of the parking around if we have to, but we really try to set the hunt up in the beginning of the year and stick with that. Also, I've been working closely with FWC like we always do on these waterfowl and alligator hunts, but on the waterfowl hunts in particular, we're going to look at the ability to add a hunt or conduct a hunt once the season has actually started, even if we didn't have that hunt draw in an earlier phase. In other words, we can add hunting, say in One West, we could add the hunting in the second and third phases of that season so that when we find out from the contractor, we can come back and add hunting and hopefully get in as much of the last half of the season as possible. All right, thanks. I don't know how I missed that slide. Let's go forward a couple slides here. One more. Okay. We just finished talking about the SDAs, and when we get to the end of the presentation, if we have questions, we'll go back and talk about those. But what we're going to discuss now will be hunting seasons, and these are proposed rule changes. Normally, in our year, we would have had this discussion at our last scheduled meeting, but that one got canceled. We needed to put these rules into the FWC process so they can be in the process and FWC staff can start working on them and they can start thinking about how they're going to approach those, and we'll be in the FWC process. So we've done that. And at this point, we're going to describe what we offered FWC, and we'll hear back from our stakeholders yet today, I'm sure, and also encourage stakeholders to go to the FWC meetings and catch up with that process. I don't think they've gone forward now with these to the public yet. So I'm going to describe, here's what we've offered for changes in hog seasons. For both hickory hammock and kisso, you can see the first bullet is the same. We want to add springtime hog hunts. We've done this on the Kissimmee River, Pua, and we've done this on Dupuy. And the idea here is that in the year towards the end of April and towards the end of May, the water recedes and the hogs sort of follow the water down, and this will concentrate the hogs. And if we offer a hunt 1 week in April and then another week late in May, the hogs will catch them off guard, they'll relax, they'll concentrate more, and we'll come back and catch them off guard again. And that's a basic strategy that we've used in Dupuy, and we've had real good response from the stakeholders about that. And again, this is the same two bullets. This is consistent with the Kissimmee River Pua. These dates are. In hickory hammock, we had one change to this. It's different than kisso. We had we had 2 September hog hunts and 1 January hog hunt. And we wanted to put all those days into the springtime hog hunts. We also had comments to remove the September hog hunts because you'd have gunfire during archery season. So that was what we offered to FWC on that. And then in kisso, we asked to remove the quota for hogs, and which was that there's 20 quotas, and that's what we sent to FWC. So if there are questions on this, we'll catch those at the end of the presentation. Should we go on to the next slide, please? Here on this slide, we're going to talk about a few changes we proposed to FWC to change some of the small game hunting seasons. And most of these were or all of these are to avoid conflicts with other users at the time the small game season occurs. On the Kissimmee River, we had small game hunting that we would get complaints about from people that would be interfering with their archery season or crossbow season. And so we asked FWC to start the small game seasons after the Zone C ends crossbow season. And Kissimmee River Pua has Zone A and Zone C. And so we're asking to end it after Zone C. This would avoid conflicts with archery. And in Hickory Hammock, we looked to change our small game seasons, or our small game season that was interfering with Thanksgiving on occasion, to have that start right after General Gun ends and to end on the Sunday before Thanksgiving. This was a little bit different algorithm for changing seasons, in that this one will not always result in the same number of days, but it will prevent it'll prevent small game from occurring during General Gun, and it will prevent it from occurring over the Thanksgiving weekend. And that really avoids an overlap with the Thanksgiving weekend, which is a pretty popular camping period. That ends that slide. All right, thank you. And then also down in the Southern Everglades, or Southern Glades, in that WMA, we wanted to add dogs and allow people to take their dogs with them on a leash. And we have a lot of people that like to walk down Aerojet Road for fishing and bird watching. And we thought that by allowing them to bring their dog, we'd increase some of our public uses down there. And the rule we're going to look at to be consistent with, which is immediately across Ingram Highway on the north side, the Rocky Glades small game hunting area. And the rule there is, for purposes other than hunting, dogs are allowed but must be kept under physical restraint at all times. So again, this is just to encourage more public use. Thank you. Here's a slide we wanted to present in March and let everyone know that we had talked about developing a temporary test plug in the canal that runs adjacent to US 27. A lot of people refer to this as the power pole area, where they fish all the underneath all the power poles. And what we're trying to do is block the canal approximately 2.5 miles south of the Broward County, Palm Beach County line, or the S-150 structure, and try to force some of this water, instead of running just straight down along US 27, trying to force it out into the Water Conservation Area 3. And what this will do is it'll increase the hydration in that area. This helps us reduce soil oxidation, and it'll reduce peat fires, hopefully. Another good reason for doing this, if you see on the map, the yellow text with the black block behind it points to the Alley North wading bird nesting colony. This would improve the foraging for that area by adding more water to the area, and it would reduce the predation at that colony. And now this is what's a test plug. So we have permitted this, that we can install this. We'll keep it there until August of 2022. And after we've done the modeling and we've seen this occur over 2 dry seasons, we will remove that test plug. Let's go on to the next slide. And just to show you how this works with recreation, we have notified the public of this. We've done this on the FWC and our own website. And this canal, the L38W canal, is accessible from either direction when we've got the one test plug in there. And you can get that either by going in at the boat ramp up at the S150, or one of the boat ramps, as you can see in the map, right at the curve in the conservation area between 2 and 3. That's US 27. Now, at the boat ramps, there are signs that tell people that there's a plug in the area. And then when you get to the boat ramp or get to the plug, we've got buoys and reflectors on both sides, upstream and downstream of the plug, to let people know where this will be. And just to go a step farther with this, this is a test plug, and it will be coming out once we know what we're going to be doing, what we've learned from this. We will go on and plan how will we replace this. Will we put it back in 2 different places or in one place? And that will help us, this information will help us further that goal of improving the hydration at the bird rookery. And now let's go, I'm sorry, Yvette, let's go back. Let's stay here for a second. if you look where it points out that we have 2 boat ramps on US 27, south of there, pretty much down towards 595 on the west side, a little bit to your left, Yvette, on the other side of US 27, right in here, just a little bit north there, going straight north, up, the other up. Now it's my turn for this. If you see where it says WCA3, straight to the right of that on US 27 is 2 boat ramps. These boat ramps have been there for a long time. And I believe they were originally permitted by Broward County and then by FDOT. They're FDOT boat ramps. And FDOT is permitted to have those there and they're required to maintain them. And FDOT is asking to remove those because they don't want to continue to maintain them. But we know that FWC is working closely with FDOT and they're trying to see if they can keep one of the 2 boat ramps there. And they're still working that out with them. And I think that was, do we have a follow-up question on that? We'll catch that at the end of the presentation as well. Okay. So Yvette, let's go to the next. There we go. We want to talk for a minute about the EA Reservoir project and the SDA that's associated with it. During the design of this project, we look forward to incorporating public use, which is part of our district policy. And initially, we identified putting the public access route along the north side. It's a little complicated because we have boats and trailers going up to the A2 East Reservoir, as you can see there. And we also have vehicles going all the way over to the A2 STA. I'm on the design team for both of these projects. And in the last month or so, we did coordinate with them and we have confirmed that we do see it's clear we can make our public access route for boats and trailers from US 27. We will be able to go across the north of the A1 FEB to the boat ramp that you see in the northeast corner of the A2 East Reservoir. And then also we will travel on to the northeast corner of the A2 West STA. That STA is part of the reservoir project as well. You know, to have boats go out there and back, we need to have a road that's wide enough for vehicles with trailers to meet. So they can't kind of edge off the side a little bit like we might be able to do with just single vehicles. And also the A2 reservoir, it will be a high embankment, like 30-foot high levees approximately. And so we won't be driving on top of those levees. We'll be driving outside of those on the north side. We will have a boat ramp in the northeast corner. You will be able to drive up and over that levee and into the launch your boat inside there. So that's part of our planning projects, long range planning. We may need to have bridges to make that happen. And we have also got plans to have what we call picket railings on the projects, on the structures in the SDAs, so that it's a better environment for fishing from. I think that's the last slide, if we can look. Okay, so let's go with questions. And I'd kind of like to see if we could go with questions and maybe start with the SDAs, because that was our first subject, and then work our way through the presentation, finish off one subject at a time.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Cook, we have Mr. Watson, Daniel Watson, followed by Mr. Elfenbein.
Hey, I'm back. Gary, real quick, I want to thank you for all the hard work that you've been doing with the STAs and working around the construction with STA West, One West, and making sure that the hunting seasons can kind of still go on if it's possible. The first question I had was, I believe a few meetings ago we talked about STA 1E possibly being able to be looked at as a place for alligator hunts.
No, I don't think that we may have talked about SDA 1 East, but we don't have plans to open up SDA 1 East for alligator hunting at this time. We're looking into it. It's something that's maybe possible.
Yeah, I know we can't really do the waterfowl that close in, but it could be a prime spot for the alligator hunts, and I think it's due for some. There's some big alligators over there. The other thing that I just wanted to talk about was the EAA north of Holy Lands. I talked about being worried about the seepage from that, and in the December meeting, December 16th, I believe you and Mr. Tom Reiner kind of said that you would be making sure that there wasn't any seepage, because you guys were, you have to take into account how to control that. But we know that there's seepage on the STAs in the northeast corner of holes. The water levels are higher, and it's in all of our reports. So again, with 3A North kind of being almost a water reservoir, almost every hunting season we get that area closed due to high water. And my concern was having that happen in holes now that we're trying to make it flow through there. I know that you said the closures would be less frequent due to the moving water once this is all done, and fewer and further in between. But I just wanted to voice my concern. Raising the water levels would be horrible for what little deer we have left there. And also, whenever we have high water there, the reason we close is because the deer get up on the tree islands, and the higher water is just going to get rid of whatever tree islands are left there, and we're going to end up with nothing but cattails in there if we go for longer hydro periods or higher hydro periods. It's in every report that fawning recruitment declined sharply at about 1.5 feet of water, and right now the schedule is looking at least 1 foot of water 50% of the area. These deer aren't drowning, but you're ringing the dinner bell when they're all clumped together on what little high land is left there. And all the SERP reports, the last meeting about the SERP project, we were worried about raising all the elevations of the buildings along 41. So I don't mean to call anybody out. I'm just trying to fully understand the strategy. If we're not going to have any higher water, then why are we worried about elevations of all the buildings that are along that flow route?
I think you're kind of asking me an engineering question, but I know that from participating in the projects that they look very closely at those levels, and we're very aware of the concerns about deer hunting, and we've been very careful about that.
All right, I appreciate it. That's just a concern I wanted to get out there, that those hot water levels, if we lose sight of the big picture, what little deer we have left there is the only food source left for that precious Florida panther or cougar that's out there. There's no pigs left, so with a dwindling deer population, there's really nothing else for them panthers to eat. So beyond hunting, you have the only food source. Sorry, the kids. You got the only food source for the panthers going away, and I know the panther's a big concern for everybody in multiple areas. And then lastly, I just wanted to ask you, it's a little off topic, but the Pensuco wetlands, that's part of the East Coast buffer. Is there ever been any kind of looking into that as gaining some access for sportsmen? And to go back to my first question, when we talked about the python hunts, you opened up, we were trying to open up Southern Glades and Rocky Glades for dogs on a leash to go for a leisurely stroll, but is there any way we can look at getting a little bit better access in Southern Glades or Rocky Glades, and even on the district property along the C-111 canal? I know a lot of folks would like to just go for a little golf cart ride, take the family out fishing right along that levee there, and right now it's all no trespassing. And that's all. Thank you.
Well, I don't, I'd have to look at there to see where you have the no trespassing. We got Rocky Glades and there those areas are open. I mean, you have to walk in. We've had bad luck leaving a gate open with dumping that occurs down there. So it's not likely that we'll leave the gates open. I don't know. I don't know
A
what I can do
gentleman,
for you on
I know those areas are walking only, but along that whole C-111 canal, if you have anything besides being on foot, a gentleman got a court appearance the other day for trespassing on that property from an FWC agent.
Excuse me, Jerry, this might be something that kind of relates down to a later thing. We probably should put this on the agenda for the next meeting. So I'm sure you can check out the gentleman's questions, and in your next presentation at the next meeting, try to address these situations. So and we're running a little late on time here. So let's put that off till the next meeting, and we will get you some detailed answers on that, sir.
Thank you, Newton.
Now I have Mr. Elfenbein, followed by Mr. Monty.
Hey guys, how are you? Jerry, you're a good dude, man.
Thank you.
You know, no, serious. You do a lot of great things. You're very attentive to the needs of everybody. You really, honest, man, I work through a lot of agencies. You really delve into the details, man. So thank you. I appreciate it. And I wanted to thank you for those changes you made on Kisso and Hickory Hammock, making additional opportunities between turkey and deer season. I think that's fantastic. I thank you. One thing I wanted to mention to you about on your rule changes is that Hickory Hammock. So till recently, my kids and my family and I, during Thanksgiving time, we would usually go camping at Lake George State Forest. And one of the benefits to going camping at Lake George State Forest at that time of the year was the opportunity to take my two young kids squirrel hunting with a 410. And not too long ago, they changed the rule exactly like what you're about to do, so that the small game season ends the Sunday before Thanksgiving. And I offer you this, that a lot of people that don't have access to private property or otherwise can make it to a management area that has access that time of year, that if you could give that opportunity somehow to people to have the opportunity to take their children out hunting, because we want to be able to grow the sportsmen so that they continue to contribute to conservation. If we could find a way to make that work, I understand that the drawback is there's a possible conflict with campers. Camping and hunting go together on a lot of management areas. Some of them even have multiple uses, mountain bikes and equestrian. And for the most part, I think everybody gets along. So if there's a way that you can include that small game season through the end of that Thanksgiving weekend, it's probably not something that I would endeavor in, but I know many other people would probably enjoy the opportunity. Sorry, I'm trying.
I appreciate your comment.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be long-winded here. So I don't really use the STAs, but I'm following what you're saying and talking about. And I offer you this as a person who's grown up using Picayune Strand State Forest and having endured the restoration projects that are continuing to this day. A lot of Picayune during contractor presence, almost a third of it at a time. So Picayune's like 74,000 acres, and 30,000 acres of that management area would be off limits for multiple years, almost in perpetuity for a decade. And oftentimes while recreating there, those workers wouldn't show up, or they wouldn't be there for a week, or equipment went down, or the closure area was 30,000 acres, but they were really only working in 2,500 acres at a time. So if you can, knowing the torture that it is as a recreational user, as a sportsman, to not be able to access public land and see nobody really doing any work on it at the period. If you can, I know you're working your best at it, but if you can consider that history, I know you know it well, as you make those decisions, maybe the needs of the people who own the land might be worked around by the contractor, as opposed to waiting for the contractor to give you dates and working around their schedule. Just an idea. I understand there's a lot of money at hand. I get it, but these are 7, 8, 10-year projects. You know, what's 6 weekends on a 10-year project? Seriously. That's that. And one more thing. I'm sorry. I know I'm long-winded, but the longer your presentation goes, the more notes I take. Danny Watson made some good comments, and I want to follow up on that. So every year it seems that Conservation Area 3, we go from a no water, dry period closure, no access, no use in 1 month. And then literally 3 weeks later after you open it, we go to a high water closure because this is what's the really killer, right? So the high water closure to access is because we don't want to stress the deer out. But the reality is that they're already stressed out because you're drowning them, right? So I know, Drew, you're listening real good, and there's other people listening. The seaside sparrow is an impediment to water flow to the south. The S12A and B, the 199 and 200, and the 343A and 344B should be wide open when there's water. Conservation Area 3 is already at or above regulation schedule. We're headed for a closure to recreational users within the next week or two if the weather conditions persist. So I'm asking you and everybody else who's listening to start focusing on that sparrow, because we're quickly approaching July the 15th and we might have a problem before we get there. That's the extent of my comments, Jerry. If you got something to say about it, I'd be listening.
Well,
Okay, thank you. Again, Jerry, in the for time's sakes, perhaps maybe we should really get a presentation on the situation with the WCA3 and the high water at our next meeting. So,
okay.
So
I'll
my
make a note of
concern
that.
is by then it may be too late, Newton, but I understand and appreciate your consideration for time.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Monty, John Monty, followed by John Rozier.
Hey, Jerry, how are you?
I'm good, John.
My question, I have a few questions, but my main concern is the 2 boat ramps we lost access to along US 27. I've been in multiple discussions with Fernando Ascanio from FDOT.
Right.
It seems like everybody's happy, but it looks like the underlying agency is Broward County, not wanting to take care of these ramps. Not sure if FWC takes over a ramp and tries to get a ramp open, what happens then? Years ago, we spent thousands and thousands of dollars to build these ramps, and now they're taking them out. The plug you put in on 27, it totally eliminates access to the areas where the boat ramps are. We lose access to an airboat camp. We lose access to the whole eastern side of Conservation Area 3A. The ramps now, even though they have Jersey barricades across them and fences across them, there's 2 ramps at each, there's 2 launches at each ramp, and at least on both of them, 1 ramp is in good condition and can be used. I don't understand why they're closed.
I think, John, the issue has to do with the FDOT is the agency responsible to maintain the ramps. They built them and permitted them. And I know that FWC is working with them to try and convince them to, at least keep one of them open.
Okay. With FWC, who's working on that? Is there a contact I can have?
I believe that would be our regional director in that area. It'd be Tom Reinhardt.
Okay. I'll check with him. One other question about the STAs, Jerry. I mean, I appreciate you being dynamic when it comes to STA 1 and, wanting to change the parking numbers and change the hunt areas. But my question to you is, how much access, how many permits are we losing this year on the STAs altogether when it comes to waterfowl season?
Well, first of all, we do have the hunt in the south cells of STA 1 West, and that hunt, that was on Fridays and Sundays, and we're not going to be able to hunt that one, but we decided to move that hunt to the north. So that's 40 quotas. If we can hunt that north cell, depending upon what happens to the contractor, the number of quotas we lose will depend upon when we find out from the contractor and what we find out. So that's the primary one. SDA 2 also has a similar problem, but we will be able to hunt that. We have to look at it and see how many quotas we can put on it. We don't really know until we see the vegetation and know how many spots are out there.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
it's substantial, John.
I know. It seems like.
Okay, Jerry, I agree with that. That's again, the next meeting we'll have a much better understanding of what's going to be happening out there. So let's move along. We have a few more people who want to speak.
Yes, Mr. Rozier.
I believe that was Mr. Rozier.
I'm sorry, Mr. Erskine.
No, that wasn't Mr. Rozier. That was
No,
Monty.
That's what I
Oh, I'm
thought.
sorry.
Man, Newton. Okay.
Damn, I'm sorry.
Jerry, nice talking. A long time no see.
Yeah, John.
You were talking about the STAs, and I hate to go back to 5 or 6 years ago, but if you're going to be closing hunting in some of the STAs for the weekends, again, is it possible, especially for us retired folks, that if a contractor is not in an STA, that we could have permits during the week? That's the first question. Second question is, in reference, I saw the hog hunting. I do like the changes you made up in there, but my other question is, are we still having a hog problem in the STAs? And if we are, why can't we go in there hog hunting?
Well, okay. Even when we don't have construction, we ourselves are working in the STAs during the week. And so I really don't see an opportunity to add hunting during the week, although we did add a Friday hunt a couple of years ago. As far as hog problems in the STAs, I think the only place we ever had any hogs in the STAs that I recall was in the west side of STA 5.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And we did a scrape down project there to even that out. And that's what the first sign was about it going to STA 5 Blumberg Road. So hopefully we solve that hog problem by eliminating the area they were using. I hope that's not what you wanted to hear, but.
Well, if you got the hogs out of there, that's okay. Then I don't have a problem. You were paying a contractor to go out and catch hogs, you know. So, and then my third question, Jerry, is the Holy Land, and eventually, if that thing ever gets built and it's 30 foot tall, and the seepage, which I know that you guys are going to try to mitigate. I think people don't understand is that pump was broken for many years and let Holy Land become more upland than it should be. So the fact that Holy Land will probably have a little bit more water in it than it has had, because that's the water regulation schedule anyways. You know, I think people need to understand that for a bunch of years, that pump was broken, allowing water to be pumped into Holy Land. So, and the other thing, I want to thank you guys for putting that plug in there, because we call it behind the bass hole.
Right.
That has been super dry, and we've had some bad fires there because it was always drier than the rest of the area. So if you do anything to make it a little more wet, that's not a problem.
Peat fire, eliminating the soil oxidation and eliminating the risk of peat fire is one of the benefits of that plug. And you know as well as we do is you have a peat fire and that ends that habitat for a long time.
Yeah, and it becomes cattails and never comes back.
Right.
You know, so.
All right.
Well, we got
right,
A2 high water on for next time.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask the next people up to please keep it as short as possible, because we're all running over our limit, but thank you very much. Next one.
Mr. James Erskine.
Thank you, thank you, Newton. I'll keep it real short. Keep us on track here. There's a gentleman that brought up concerns with Holy Lands and the water levels that could be created in the reservoir. And I just want to let this group know that we're tracking that. We work very closely with the district through the development of this progress. And there is a lot of specific language in regards to that, not only on the engineering side of the south side of that structure of the EAA reservoir, a lot of fairly specific language that tells us how Holy Lands is going to be managed in the future and recognizes the current regulation schedule. So I'd just like to offer myself as a coordinator for FWC. Now that gentleman who brought that up, I think he's brought it up before, he can reach out to me and I'd be happy to walk through that with him and just help him understand. And I think as this project progresses, it'll help anybody have a little more comfort with it. Over. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. Mr. Mike Melton.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Jerry. Thank you for the presentation, all the work you're doing. I don't necessarily agree with the stopping hunting in Hickory Hammock before Thanksgiving. I mean, hunting on Thanksgiving morning is a little bit of like a tradition in the South, but I mean, I'm not going to beat you up on it or anything like that. What I really wanted to talk about, I live in South Miami-Dade County, and to kind of echo Danny Watson's comments, I mean, the access to Rocky Glades and Southern Glades with those gates there is tough. Maybe there can be some sort of code system where hunters pre-register, and so you don't have just an open gate with a guy going to dump his refrigerator or whatever. And then the other question I wanted to ask is on Aerojet Road on the map, on the brochure, it says no hunting. But it's not clear if that's just for gun hunting or if you see a python on Aerojet Road, can you hunt it? Can you harvest it? Without a firearm, but it's just not clear because the map is blocked off as saying no hunting all along Aerojet Road and 100 yards east and west of it. So that's it. Thank you.
I think the way that would affect your ability to capture a python, I mean, you could capture a python, but you couldn't use a gun because you'd be in a no hunting area. So while it's closed to hunting, you can't discharge a firearm. But if you see a python, you can grab it or catch it by any other means.
Okay, so you can actually hunt a python just without a firearm on Aerojet Road.
Well, you're not actually, you're just, okay. Well, you kind of got me on that one. Maybe I better backtrack a little bit, but I just really have a funny feeling that you can capture a python there, but you can't discharge a firearm.
Okay,
That's
so if
how
I'm
I think
walking my dog now, because I can walk my dog down there, if I see a python on Aerojet Road and I have a stick or a knife or something like that, I can, maybe you don't have the answer right now, but that's just something to think about because it's not clear on the brochure, and obviously it's kind of a tough thing to explain.
Well, maybe we can clarify that in the brochure. I think Justin Bingham might still be on here, but I think he answered that question earlier, and it will probably be the same for that area as it was for the other areas. And that
so
was
this is Mike Kirkland. You absolutely can capture that python on Aerojet Road, and Jerry's right. You just have to follow the local and state firearm restrictions of that area.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, next.
Next is Nyla Pipes, followed by Brandon James.
Hi, sorry about that. It took me a second to get unmuted. Y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, Nyla Pipes, One Florida Foundation, and 10 years Floridian, 10 and a half if you want to get technical. And the reason I mention that is because I want to bring a little bit of focus to some of the conversation that I've heard throughout the day. First of all, I want to thank you all for making this available via Zoom. This is a meeting that I often cannot make as a mom who is busy running children around this time of day, making dinner, those sorts of things. So that's why you all haven't had me at this particular meeting in the past, but Zoom makes that much, much more accessible to me. And I mention all of this because it's really important, because one of the ongoing themes in all of the conversations I have with sportsmen is access, 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 right? And so I want to talk about the fact that if you're going to restore the Everglades and you're going to get people behind python eradication and all of these other efforts that we're all heavily involved in, you really need people to love the land. And the way that people fall in love with the land is they have access to it. And as somebody who has been in this state for just over a decade, I will tell you that Florida is unlike any other place in this country. And I am a classic example of the kind of people you're trying to get involved in conservation and in the sportsman community. Because I'm a woman who grew up in a hunting, fishing, outdoor lifestyle. But somewhere along the way, I sort of stopped some of that as I, moved away from my small town. I went to college, I had children, I got my first career. I am now currently living on a 1/4 acre lot in Port St. Lucie, but I still want my children to have access to the sort of thing that I had as a kid, right? So in order to get out there and enjoy our public lands and the taxpayer dollars, the lands that the taxpayer dollars are supporting, I need to know where. I need to know how. I need to have all of that at my fingertips. And it's not always easy and it's not always clear. So I just wanted to say that the work you all are doing, and I know that this meeting is particularly aimed at, is very, very important. And I'm learning a lot by today's meeting. And I just wanted to thank you for that and also share a little bit of my perspective as a 42-year-old female, moved to Florida a decade ago, wants my kids to grow up knowing Florida the way I wish I'd have known it when I was 12. Thank you so much for, again, making this accessible via Zoom. And I agree, we need as much access as possible. If you're looking at closing things on weekends or Thanksgiving time, you might want to reconsider that based upon, I guess what I would call the weekend warrior, who may have really reasons they want to get out into the environment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nyla.
Next is Mr. Brandon James. Please,
Hello? You guys hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
No, everybody's pretty much answered any of the questions I had. I have the cabin out there that's in the Area 3 on the south, east corner of 27 in the alley. We use those boat ramps since my whole family's been going to the cabin since the 50s. So that's pretty much got to wait to find out what FWC is doing. And you got the area. I also want to talk about the water level. The area has been open for 3 weeks and it's already pretty much flooded. Our whole island's flooded. And, I'm sure in the next week or two, you guys are going to close it to high water. But everybody else is pretty much answered. And I guess the next meeting, a lot of this stuff will be addressed. So that's it.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Danny James.
I want to thank you for taking my question. Yeah, we've been going out to that camp since the 50s. And my only other thing with the ramps is if you can't keep them open, maybe you should think about some ramp fees like they do in the salt water or like at 20-mile bend, just to help keep up the ramp there. So other than that, thank you for taking my questions, and that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baron Moody. Mr. Moody lowered his hand. I have no other public commenters. Oh.
Jerry, thank you very much. Listen, I hope everybody knows that Jerry and Dan and BJ and those guys over in land management and Steve, they are responsible for all the wonderful access and opportunities we have on these properties. And we can never say thank you enough to the district and to the land management group for what they do. Now, Dan, I know you're coming up. We're already 10 minutes over. So what I hope we can do is, Dan, make your presentation, and then we will skip the recreation discussion. It's not very important, and we will adjourn following Dan Collar's presentation. So Dan, welcome.
Okay, can you hear me?
That's going to be the watchword of 2020. Can you hear me? Yes, we can.
All right, thank you, Newton. Dan Cotter with the Land Stewardship section. And folks, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly just to catch up. We usually finish by 8, but I know you know, it's challenging through Zoom. So I'll go through this quickly and then answer questions at the end. Yvette, I'm not able to progress even after clicking it. You can move forward, Yvette. Okay, just real quickly, you know, we're the Arthur Marshall Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge is moving forward with a really fantastic visitor service plan that they approved about a year or so ago to provide a lot more opportunity recreation-wise on the refuge, Water Conservation Area 1. One of the things they're doing is opening up the levees to a lot more access, including horseback riding, hiking, and biking. And that includes 5 additional new gates to provide for those uses. So our engineers we're partnering with the refuge, and our engineers are currently permitting those gates with the Corps. And then our West Palm Beach field station and Fort Lauderdale field station will install those gates. Okay, go ahead, Yvette. There's the 5 locations or actually 6 locations of the new gates that will provide access onto the levee of the Water Conservation Area. 1 gate from west side of Wellington area, 2 gates, walk-through gates at the refuge parking lot, headquarters parking lot to the north and south along the L40, and then 2 gates at the southern end by Locks Road, 1 heading north on the L40 and 1 heading west. And then a gate just south of there where the boat ramps are heading on the L36. So we hope to see that all come to fruition over the next couple months here. Go ahead, Yvette. Mentioned this before, the district, now we're moving up to the Kissimmee River area on Highlands County, and Mike mentioned this area a little bit. This is a parking area we've had for some time on the west side of the river in Highlands County, referred to the 4 E's. Go ahead, Yvette. You can see from this picture, this is the parking lot footprint, and we've always had a canoe launch there. What we did was provided improvements there and completed an additional airboat launch area to the north side of that parking lot, northeast side of that parking lot. Go ahead, Yvette. This is what the parking lot looks like now. I'd like to thank our land management staff. They really trimmed up these trees, you know, just really cleaned up the area, expanded the parking area, which allows more vehicular use and particular trailers. And on the right-hand side, you can see now we have a new airboat launch area that's been signed to that portion of the river. Will be dry at some times during the dry season, but another great access point for both airboat and canoeing. Okay, go ahead, Yvette. Okay, now we're going to move to Site 1 access. Site 1 is adjacent to the refuge. This is down in western Palm Beach County. This area has turned out to be a really incredible area for hiking and biking, but particularly birding. We've had some Audubon tours in there. So we're going to propose to install a grass parking area so we can provide better access into the area. Okay, Yvette. So right off of Locks Road, one of those bridges, over the next few months, we'll be working on installing some additional gates, signage, and site prep so we can have some grass parking area and people can pull off of Locks Road and be able to access the area. Okay, Yvette. Now we're going to jump over to Martin County, Alapata off Fox Brown Road. This is probably an important slide for Charles and his equestrian group. That's probably the one most popular equestrian trails, and it provides access for hiking and hunting off Fox Mountain Road in Allapattah. The trail was temporarily closed at that point due to some culvert failures, or a culvert failure that we had there. Okay, Yvette. The trail was rerouted so that we continue to have trail use. That culvert has now just been replaced. What we found is the reroute has actually, which our staff did, is actually even a better route and a better gate that they've installed that's a little bit more horse friendly for the equestrian uses. So that bypass is in place, and we'll continue to use that bypass. Okay, Yvette. Hickory Hammock and Istapoga, another area that we've got some temporary trail closures at these 2 points on the southern end of the trail. We plan on replacing those culverts hopefully by early this fall, and we'll have that trail back in place after those culverts are replaced. Okay, Yvette. On the Kissimmee River, we have numerous campsites. A lot of them are accessible by boat, but we definitely have some that are along the Florida National Scenic Trail. One primitive camping area there on the west or east side of the river, which is referred to as No Name Slough, primarily used by the Florida National Scenic Trail and the hikers from the Florida Trail Association. They would like to relocate that one about a mile north of where it is to where I show that red arrow. We met on site. It's actually a better site, adjacent to the water, closer to a water source, and we see no problem with moving that further north. Okay, Yvette. Just an update. Probably most of you know that, when the lake fell below 12 feet, these particular locks that are listed here were closed. And then the S193 has got some restriction as far as times. That will stay in place until the lake goes above 12.5. It's right now about 12.2, and it just seems to be coming up. Our O&M operations and maintenance folks feel that maybe in the next week or so, you could look forward to seeing these locks reopen as it gets above 12.5. Okay, Yvette. Volunteer projects, we've always very supportive of volunteers. We've got another request to construct a shelter. This is up in Polk County on the west side of Lake Hatchnahaw, right adjacent to the Rolling Meadows property. Another request by the KRVSA, Kissimmee River Valley Sportsman Association. They've built these before, done a tremendous job. It would be in an uplands, minimal disturbance. We've already reviewed the location. We just need to review the engineer designs that'll be supplied by the volunteers. We've got an agreement that we're going to sign with them. And then they, as in the past, will oversee the construction and the permitting with our approval. So that'll be a great project. Okay, Yvette. Another volunteer project we look forward to happening, over this next year. We were supposed to do this year in April on Earth Day, is a big project at Blanket Bay Slough, which is on the east side of the Kissimmee River in Osceola County. Something similar these groups have done in the past. Florida Sportsmen's Conservation Association remove some of the old fence posts and debris and install new airboat signage and delineate that. So obviously with the situation, we had to postpone that, but we're going to go ahead and reschedule that over the next year. Okay, Yvette. Okay, an update on the COVID-19 land closures. And, certainly our hearts go out to all those and their families who have suffered and been impacted due to this pandemic. The good news is all district lands are currently open for recreation. And as our executive director mentioned, just about all of our camping areas are open except for a few that have some large facilities that we will continue to evaluate so that we can open those in the future too. Okay, Yvette. And on our lands, you may have seen these signs, but just, keep in mind, most of you are familiar with this, to practice social distancing, avoid large gatherings. Right now, we're keeping large events prohibited on district lands until further notice. Limit your contact out there, especially with, you've got open gates and handles and so forth. Sanitize your hands when you do so. Okay, Yvette? All right, just to recap, we had a back one. March 4th and 5th, the multi-agency conducted 2 prescribed burns on the southwest shore of Lake Okeechobee. Huge burn, over 20,000 acres burned as part of the integrated management approach on Lake Okeechobee. Very responsible prescribed burns to reduce threat of wildfire and help improve habitat for fish, waterfowl, wading birds in the Everglades, snail, kite, and other wildlife populations. And next slide just shows the size of the burn and the multi-agency personnel that were on that burn. Go to the next slide. As you can see, again, that picture on the left, the size of that burn that was, and the multi-agency project that was. Okay, I think that's it. Go ahead. All right, I just want to thank, just want to take a quick second to thank our IT staff, our district IT staff. This is all new to me, and they're really the backbone behind this, and the amount of training they gave us, particularly me, over the last 10 days. Newton, if you're good, we can open it up for questions.
I just want to thank everybody. Let's just give, is any members of the public, Yvette, that looking to speak on this?
Yes, Mr. Elfenbein.
Okay, we'll only ask them to please take a minute because we're obviously 30 minutes over our normal time.
I'll take like 30 seconds, Newton. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's effort. You guys are wonderful. Thank you, Newton. Appreciate everything you're doing. Have a great night.
And that is it, Mr. Cook.
Well, thank everyone for attending. Obviously, this is a new experience for all of us. We ran a little over. I have to say, in over 10 years, I don't think we've ever run past 8:15, but we will take it. The next meeting is on September the 14th, and hopefully it will be one where we can sit down and actually converse with each other. But I really think that we probably should keep the Zoom so people who are scattered around South Florida can attend and participate. And I think we should look at that. Thank you very much, Drew, for staying with us. And thanks for
thank
all
you,
the
Newton.
staff.
Thank you, Newton, for facilitating a good meeting. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, this is a new experience, so it ran a little longer, but I
okay.
just think that everyone did a wonderful job. And so with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.